everyone. Thank you for being here this morning. We appreciate everyone. We'll get started this morning. I think Ms. Taylor is going to be joining us by Zoom. I don't see her on yet, but she probably will be joining us. Welcome to the Mesa City Council study session for April 16th, 2026. Council member Taylor is participating by Zoom. Otherwise, all other council members are present. Item 1 is to review the agenda we have for our Monday, April 20th council meeting. Council, let's go through that, and if there's any questions, we have staff on hand to answer.
It's a lot of grants.
Do we have any presentations?
So with Monday, we do have an executive session along with that.
Yeah, that's right, Mayor. We'll start at 3 o'clock on Monday. We'll have a special council meeting, which is an executive session to discuss the development, and then we'll start the study session at 4:30 p.m. on Monday.
On Monday, okay. All right, Council, Ms. Duff?
So the study session, I mean, the things that I bookmarked, that I didn't know if we wanted to discuss or not, I don't really have issue, but 5S, the purchase of the One West Main, 5T, which is the Chrisman Road project, I don't know if Councilmember Summers, I'll leave it to him if he wants to bring that up. And then 6A, and I hope these numbers held, 6A on the hotel at Longbow. I know I received several emails on the concerns about that project, and I don't know if Councilmember Goforth would like to talk about that or not.
Yeah, some of those, that one's introduction as well,
Okay.
so ordinance, so that'll be another couple of weeks after
Yeah,
the
I
internet.
would, Jen, like to, but not this time.
Okay, got it. Yeah, no problem.
Okay.
And Mayor, Councilmember Duff, I will just say on 5T, which is Chrisman Road, this is just, we're entering into an agreement with ADOT so that that portion of Chrisman could be constructed while State Route 24 is being constructed. And so we do this from time to time just to make it easier on the construction aspect. So that's all that is I believe it's north of the section north of the 24.
South of Williamsfield.
South of Williamsfield, north of State Route 24.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, this is not the one going
No.
You're correct.
through. Okay.
So, therefore, I don't have anything outstanding, those were just
Yeah.
things that kind of stood out to me.
Council, anything else? Okay. Well, hearing that, we'll move on then to item 1 is the review of the agenda. We did that. Item 2A is the presentation and provide direction on the Mesa Police Department's budget. Thank you, chiefs and team.
Okay, oh, perfect, thank you. Perfect, thank you.
Good morning, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council. Thank you for having us here today. My name is Dan Butler. For those of you that may be watching that don't know who I am, I serve as the police chief for the Mesa Police Department, and I have my executive team here with me today. We're super excited to present our budget. We've been working on this budget since November of last year. So my team consists of Chief Nesbitt, who sits to my right, Manager Chrissa York, Chief Tim Walker, and then as we go through the presentation, other team members will cycle up through. Chief Spicer, Chief Sterling, Deputy Director Phelps will also be coming through, and finally, Jeff Cutler, who is the Assistant Chief over our Investigations Bureau. As we go through the next couple of slides, we're going to highlight successes, overview of crime, safety, and present our proposed budget. The slide that you see right now captures what we do and why the Mesa Police Department exists. So we exist to provide professional policing that prevents crime while creating a safe and thriving community. Everything that you see today, our priorities, accomplishment, and budget requests is built on this foundation. Every dollar that we talk about through this budget presentation aligns with our city priorities. With that foundation in place, let's move into our top priorities and objectives. These priority objectives come from our strategic initiatives that were developed many years ago with the Mesa Police Department. They can continue to be our guiding principles as we move forward. I will highlight a couple of them as we go through, and if there's any questions about the rest of them, please feel free to ask. Strategic staffing. We hire, train, and retain the best candidates. None of our goals are possible without the right people. We're investing in focused market recruitment, employee wellness programs to attract and keep top-tier sworn and professional staff in a highly competitive national marketplace. Exceptional organizational effectiveness. This is really about our leadership development, how we identify and build not only sworn, but our professional staff members, getting them prepared for next levels of leadership within our organization. That is incredibly important to us. Succession planning is one of the top priorities that we have as an executive team and an organization. And then finally, community engagement. We continue to deepen our partnerships with community businesses, nonprofits. The stronger relationships, it means better crime prevention. It means more trust in our community, and it means more eyes and ears out there with our community members that help us continue to be the safest major city of our size in the nation. Highlights and accomplishments.
Chief.
Yes, sir.
I know, I'm already
yeah.
just 2 slides in.
Yeah.
I do appreciate on the cover that about preventing crime instead of fighting crime, preventing it from even occurring. On that note, I just wanted to emphasize on the second slide, reduce crime and increase citizen safety, the initiative to increase traffic enforcement to reduce fatal accidents. And I just want to emphasize that a lot that can happen to prevent these speeding and hazards is street design improvements, which I know you don't design the streets, but I must contribute that the street design improvements such as traffic calming and narrowing lanes, adding pedestrian infrastructure, offer a proactive, sustainable approach to safety that intuitively prevents dangerous driving. Conversely, police enforcement is reactive, often inequitable, and generally fails to create lasting safety changes, making physical design a more effective, equitable, long-term solution to traffic fatalities. People will always drive as fast as the streets allow. So I appreciate your enforcement and everything, but I also want to encourage from our transportation department looking at those hotspots, and I believe that they do, that we continue to look at our street designs and make adjustments, as well as look at and future ongoing developments and redos of our streets, and looking for those opportunities so that people are traveling in a way that is safe, whether it's speed or, potential hazards that could be there. So I just want to put that out there.
Okay, thank you.
Because
Thank you,
it's
Mayor.
related, and I'm
Councilmember
pretty,
Duff.
I'm passionate about that. Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you.
Before you start, Ms. Taylor has joined us at 0735, so she's with us. Okay, thank you.
Never leaves you, does it?
Pardon?
The 24-hour clock never leaves you.
No, it doesn't. Sorry. Just tell me.
Thank you. So as we move through, we wanted to take an opportunity just to highlight at a very high level the great work the men and women of the Mesa Police Department do. You have heard about our crime reduction strategies. You've heard about our efforts in the past, when we're going to go over those again as the presentation moves on. But we do want to highlight is some of the accomplishments that we had in 2025. In 2025, there are 26 human beings in the city of Mesa that are alive today because of the men and women of the police department, where they took action and saved lives. 13 additional members of our community that are alive today because of the Narcan tool that we carry and we deployed as well. And 3 of our members received the Medal of Excellence. Now, these awards, they represent the officers who stepped up beyond their normal job, beyond the call of duty, in critical moments to save people's lives. This is people being burned or pulled out of burning buildings and vehicles. These heroic acts, every one of them, is what they do every single day. And it's really, really important that people understand that they're not just going out there and doing what they're asked to do, they're doing more. They're putting their lives in jeopardy to ensure that community members are saved. In the center photo that you see up here, that's actually body-worn camera of one of our officers who received a life-saving medal for this action right here. And then it's also about community engagement. I spoke a little bit earlier about how community engagement helps keep our communities safe. But last year, formal community engagement events, and this isn't just our officers stopping by schools and engaging with children in the schools as part of their day-to-day activities. These are the formal events that the Mesa Police Department puts together. And there were 429 of them. We had 54 GAIN events last fall, and then 127 of our community members went through our Citizen Police Academy or our Community Engagement Academy. So from soccer games with neighborhood kids, basketball in neighborhoods, to our Popular Citizens Academy and GAIN Outreach, our officers are out there in the community building relationships every single day. They're not just feel-good events. We're not just doing them to feel good about it. They prevent crime and trust through these partnerships. Also, these highlights that I just spoke about, they demonstrate the high return the citizens of Mesa get on their investment in public safety in the Mesa Police Department. The budget we're presenting today will help us sustain that level of excellence for our community and our community connection.
Good morning, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council. The next 2 slides are slides you have heard me talk about already, but they are important slides, and I do think we need to continue to emphasize this information. So building off of Chief Butler's opening statements, the Mesa Police Department delivers professional prevention-focused policing that directly contributes to a safe and economically thriving city. Mesa has the lowest NIBRS Group A crime rate in 2024 among comparable major cities that we analyzed. At 44 crimes per 1,000 residents, Mesa stands apart from peer jurisdictions, even in spite of our continued population growth. Mesa recorded 22,475 total Group A crimes in 2024. Now, while we had a minimal increase of 0.7% from 2023, that's essentially flat, given that our population continues to grow. I want to highlight that for Group A property crimes, we saw a 10.6% decrease, and what that's demonstrating is effective prevention and suppression strategies. And then for Group A persons crimes, we did see an 18.6% increase from 2023, but it's primarily driven by specific offense categories that are being directly addressed through targeted enforcement, something like our HEAT operations. That is specific target enforcement, which would drive up the reportable crimes, but it's coming with arrest attached to it. The overall stability of total crime, combined with significant property crime reduction, reflects operational effectiveness and responsible stewardship of resources. The outcome reflects disciplined strategy, data-driven deployment, accountability, and strong community partnership.
Ms. Goforth.
Could you just repeat that about the increase? I just want to make sure everybody understands what that really means.
Right. We show an increase in persons crimes, and Part A crimes, or Group A crimes as we call them now, are broken up into property and persons. And there's more. We highlight violent crime, but there are more crimes that belong to that Group A persons crime. And so what we notice through the CompStat process that we have every 28 days is we have targeted enforcement operations, and something like the heat operations, that we're actively doing operations to seek out the criminals, that's going to drive those crimes up, right? So you'll see later, Chief Walker will talk about violent crimes and the reduction in violent crimes, but you're also going to see other categories with proactive activity that drive up that crime status because of the initiatives we're doing to fight those particular types of crimes that sometimes go hidden.
Okay, I appreciate that, thank you.
Of course.
This is Councilmember Taylor. Can you hear me?
We can.
Yes, ma'am.
Go ahead, Ms. Taylor.
Hi, thank you. I was just curious, could you just give a thank you for your presentation. Do you mind giving just a couple examples of what a Group A crime is?
Mayor, Vice Mayor, Councilmember Taylor. Yes, so a Group A crime includes homicides, not robberies, I stand corrected. They moved that to property crime, ironically. So it's homicides, aggravated assaults, aggravated and assaults and assaults for domestic violence. It includes, let me look real quick so I can get you a comprehensive, I do have that document with me. Hang on one second so I can be clear. It also includes rapes, and then it includes human trafficking, and it also includes criminal sexual contact. So what the FBI did is we have ARS statutes, right? That's what we charge. But then the FBI takes those ARS statutes and puts them into specific NIBRS codes. And so that's how they get classified for UCR data for the FBI.
Well, I understand. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Of course.
And you're saying that you just saw a slight increase in those because we've been actively pursuing them more. So are you saying it's kind of flushing those criminal activities out where there's just more exposure to them?
Mayor, Vice Mayor, Councilmember Taylor, to some degree, it's not solely based on that. What we're pointing out is some of our proactive activity is what drives our crimes up because we are encountering people doing crimes prior to being reported. And so in a heat operation, right, so a human exploitation operation, we create the operation, we draw in the criminal activity, and that results in a crime documentation as well as an arrest.
I see. Okay. Thank you very much for explaining that.
Of course.
Go ahead.
Okay. So this next slide you have seen before as well, year over year, but this is our comparative crime data. Now, you might notice that I talked about the number 44, and I want to point out that I clearly see the number is 43 on this graph. So what that shows is the 44 number comes from Arizona DPS that we report month over month, and that data gets updated as our process improves. Like we charge a certain ARS statute, and then it gets updated into a NIBRS statute. So sometimes you might have a little disparity, but it's just slight. This data we directly pulled from the FBI UCR database so that we could show the comparisons, and we didn't want to offset it or change it. So this comes straight from that website, and it can be reproduced. And so what we're showing here is when we are measured against similarly sized cities across the country, Mesa's crime rate is significantly lower in every reporting year that's shown here. While other jurisdictions report rates ranging from approximately 70 to 100, over 160 crimes per 1,000 residents, Mesa remains at 44. And this performance has been maintained during sustained population growth. Our approach emphasizes focused enforcement, proactive patrol, technology integration, and strategic resource allocation.
How do you choose which comparable cities?
So what we did here is we picked cities with populations, if you see the red line, populations from 500,000 to 650, because it's important to make sure we're not comparing ourselves to too small of cities and then too large of cities, because the city personality is different and the dynamics are
So how many
different.
cities are within that range?
Well, we
total?
picked, I don't know off the top of my head
Okay.
totally how many cities, but these are the cities that we generally compare to. We usually stay with the same cities. The only city that dropped off this time is Virginia Beach, because their population changed, and so we didn't add them to this slide. But generally, what happens is our CompStat analysts go to the UCR database, and then they collect that data and say, okay, what cities' populations are similar, and what cities look similar to us, and operate the way we do, and how can we compare that data to them?
Is that size range a designated range for reporting? Is that why we choose that 5 to 650?
Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council Member Goforth, I think we just picked that city to show even some larger cities we are still in comparison to them, but we don't want to go too small, because we often hear from citizens, right, how do we compare against Gilbert, and how
Right.
do we compare against Chandler, how do we compare against Tempe? We have to say, Mesa is so diverse, right? Even different regions of Mesa look different, and they're not the same. And so we want to make sure that we're talking about similar type cities, and so we just came up with that range to present a picture that we think depicts the stuff that we do as law enforcement. We could change it at any request. If you wanted to know a particular city, we can go into this FBI database and pull whatever data needs to be pulled.
That's helpful. I wasn't sure where we got that size category, so thank you. And it makes sense what you're saying, but as far as comparison, it shouldn't be to a city half our size. I understand. Thanks,
Ma'am.
Go ahead.
I'm done. I'm going to step
All right.
away.
Is it Chief Walker then?
Yeah, good morning, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and council members. This slide represents how we are creating a safe and thriving environment. Violent crime, as you see up there, is a combination of all robberies, rapes, aggravated assaults, and homicide. In 2025, the Mesa Police Department realized a reduction of almost 14% in violent crime. This is due to our sworn and professional staff's commitment to our crime-fighting model and dedication to reducing violent crime across the city. The reduction can be attributed to the increase in on-view activity and mission-directed community engagement. And one of the things that we always look at when the question's always asked, how do you do it? Well, what we do is we have a violent crime initiative where our crime analysts work with our operations lieutenants, working with street crimes, gangs, all our other units to work on focus areas where they look at the data and they have a mission directive, go out there and work on certain areas. And when they focus on these areas, there's either one, we prevent the crimes from happening, or two, we are there to arrest people that are about to commit the crimes, or we catch them in the act. And two of the examples that we have is our on-view prohibited possessor offenses increased by 31%, and the weapon violations are increased by 19%. So basically, by focusing on certain areas, we're able to increase our arrests, which, as Chief Nesbitt said earlier, that kind of raises our rates for the person's crimes. But on the good side is we arrested those people beforehand, before they prevented crimes, and that's how we're able to reduce our violent crimes throughout the city.
Mayor and council, may I jump in just real quick on that? I just want to emphasize the point that Chief Walker just made. What we see every time we see an increase in proactive police work, so the men and women of the police department going out there and actively seeking out criminals committing crimes, we also see a corresponding decrease in all other crime types. So what Chief Walker is talking about here is the efforts of the men and women last year. The proactive police work was up, and correspondingly crime dropped down. Now, and you heard Chief Nesbitt talk about other crime types that we can actually drive the societal crimes up, like drug possessions, that'll show as an increase in that crime type. That's because of the work that they're doing out there. So I do want to credit the men and women of the Mesa Police Department and the members of the community that help us every single day and engage with us for this reduction in 2025. It was a significant reduction in crime.
Ms. Goforth.
Can you give us those examples again of the types of crimes where the arrests went up that translated into an overall decrease in crime? You said it, but I can't remember.
Yeah, it's prohibited possessor offenses. So that would be a prohibited possessor is someone that is not allowed to have a firearm if they're a convicted felon or something like that. And so if we find them carrying a firearm, they can be arrested for that because they're prohibited possessor. So those are usually your people that are have a criminal record, and we assume through our focus efforts on our research, they might be going to commit a crime again. And so if we stop someone, for example, that's a prohibited possessor and they have a firearm on, like a handgun, and they're not supposed to have one, they can be arrested for that. And so essentially, if you look at the violent crimes, aggravated assault, homicide, usually those are going to be committed with a firearm. So if we find someone for a violation and they happen to have that firearm, they can be arrested for another felony. So we're basically, in a sense, preventing a crime by arresting them before they get able to do it.
So I'm kind of coming full circle now that we've been through a few slides. So a crime and an arrest. So your arrests go up, but tell me again, how do you define the crime?
So I'll jump in.
In what you're reporting?
So the reporting mechanism, so it used to be a UCR-based mechanism. It was something that the federal government created in the 30s or 40s, and forgive me my memory, for when it was created. I've lost it a little bit. But it changed in 2019 to a different reporting mechanism, and they changed the way that they want us to report crimes that occur to them. So the intentionality of that was for them to try to understand why crimes occur in communities, as opposed to in the past it was a crime occurred, this is the very strict definition of why the crime occurred. Now they're trying to figure out, well, what is it that's actually causing crimes in society? And I hope we get it figured out, because there's people that argue about that all the time. So as crimes are occurring, an officer goes out, takes a report after the fact, or they could be out there looking for a crime type like we talked about, a prohibited possessor. That is an individual who has been convicted of a felony that is not allowed to possess a firearm. Well, what we know in policing is a large percentage of the time, not absolutely, those individuals that have been arrested for felonies, for violent felonies multiple times, they're going to commit more violent felonies. So if we know who they are or know the area that those crime types are occurring, we'll be in that area, making contact with them, and if we find that they're in violation of the law, we arrest them for that category, the prohibited possessor category, before they can commit a robbery, an aggravated assault, or a homicide. So that's what we're talking about when we are in the right areas where crimes are likely to occur, targeting the individuals who are likely to commit crimes. It prevents the crimes from occurring after the fact.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor and Chief, correct me if I'm misstating any of this. But leading up to this, over the last few years, most of the categories within violent crime had been falling already. We were seeing marked decrease in homicides and others. It was aggravated assaults, I believe, that were staying stubbornly high. And you could speculate the reasons for that, but it really didn't tell the story, these numbers, because one category within that was remaining high, but we were seeing most violent crime throughout the city falling the last several years, with the exception of aggravated assaults that continued to stay high, and now that has finally started to taper off. And so the story's good about 25, but if you broke down some of these categories within violent crime the last several years, there's also a really good story to tell about the decrease in all those other categories.
Well, I want to add that overarchingly, I think that we're highlighting all the great things that our police department has done, but one of the foundational things I think is CommStats. CommStats helps drive your mission. I would assume everything you do out there on the streets, and the proactive enforcement with patrol, your detectives, your heat units. When you get with other agencies, multi-agencies, and do enforcement for the city of Mesa or for the East Valley, we're there at the table. And I think that's so important that we understand the stats that drive. The stats kind of drive the mission, but the just being proactive in everything that we do to reduce our violent crime, and as it drops, is so important that we're doing that probably today. I remember being on council for a few years, that we're doing it with less patrol officers, or we want to keep it at a certain level, but we're doing policing even better today than we were a few years ago. Mr. Cost, would you agree to that? He started it, and we just want to make sure that your teams, your professional staff, and your sworn officers know that we stand behind you. And we haven't even got to the numbers yet. We're talking about highlighting, all the good things. So, when you're out there for heat, drug sales, robberies, all the crime, in person and what was it before? Your violent crime, person and property crimes per 1,000 residents. And when you relate that between 500 and 650,000 population, we're among the lowest other than Virginia Beach, which they dropped off, but they have an extremely low, I think everybody carries a gun there, right? In Virginia Beach, being a military town.
Yeah, half military.
But I just want kudos to you, everything we're doing. We're reducing our crime. We're listening to our community residents. You're out there proactively in our community. Just even the little things like e-bikes. All of us council, we get emails about e-bike enforcement. You're out there talking about it, and thank you for doing that. So let's get to the numbers or whatever is next. Mr. Walker, were you done?
Yes.
Okay.
Passing the torch.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. My name is Aaron Spicer. I am the Assistant Chief over the Operations Support Bureau. This is a really busy slide, so as we unpack it, I just have a couple things that I'll talk about, and we can break down exactly what you're seeing here in this slide. I wanted to point out, as you'll see, our traffic collisions. This is an area we have experienced challenge over the past few years. The graph is we're about a 5% increase in total crashes year over year from last year. While the fatalities increased slightly this year, which fatalities is the red line at the bottom there. You'll see that we saw double-digit decreases from the years prior, so 22 and 23 were respectively higher than 25. In response to our rise in collisions citywide, we made significant strides in enforcement and education. Incorporating a data-driven deployment strategy, our traffic activities, which is written warnings and citations by our total police department staff, increased by 22%. And that is significant, with the biggest percentage being written warnings. So this also illustrates our commitment to correcting behavior before it leads to more serious consequences. Along the lines of impaired driving, our impaired driving arrests have increased by 8% in the past year. And I'm going to repeat this stat twice, 27% over the last 2 years. So our officers are out arresting DUI and impaired drivers. To support these efforts, both on the enforcement for citations, I'll also talk about adding 6 motor officers or traffic officers to our traffic unit this year. So we dug down deep and found some staffing where we could shift those bodies to really tackle this issue. We did that in January, and in the first full rotation, we saw almost 100% increase in the total enforcement work by those staff. So kudos to that. In addition to the much needing staffing adds, we also added some educational programming. And these kind of run the gamut of things from pedestrian safety, motorcycle safety, which includes helmet use, visibility, impaired driving, e-bikes, speed and inattention, all things that contribute to higher collisions and incidents on our roadway. Just want to talk briefly about our partnerships, and I think Councilmember Duff talked about it earlier. Participation in the quarterly engineering, or we call them monthly coordination meetings with, that is a kind of an all hands on deck approach where we look at things like you talked about, like roadway design and like timing cycles, things that we may not be able to impact necessarily, but things that do make a difference. I also want to highlight the work from our partnerships from GOHS, Mesa Fire and Medical, and Valley-wide task forces, also our non-governmentals, which we host civilian motorcycle safety courses. Again, while it's difficult to identify one single factor, we look at we really look at a holistic approach based on the 3 E's, we call them, the engineering, enforcement, and education. So our focus is simple. It's safer streets for everyone in Mesa. And then for the presentation here, we broke it down. You can see where the red dots illustrate where fatal collisions occurred, and also the corresponding chart to the left. So I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Ms. Duff?
Do you have a breakdown of the fatalities or crashes? You know, I'm sure you break them down in saying of the fatalities, so many of them were in vehicles or, you know, were they pedestrian, bicycle, motorcycle? I know that's usually in one category. I think there are about a third of the deaths on the streets is from that outside of the vehicle type of thing.
Yeah.
You know, some kind of breakdown in where the deaths are occurring.
I do, and that's a great question, and it's something that we do track. We track year over year. So the issue of pedestrian safety and motorcycle safety seems to be a reoccurring theme year over year. That's why some of our educational, really, that's why we put a lot of educational and enforcement efforts into those particular areas. You know, again, to say that there's one single causational factor, but you know, particularly some of the west side areas where we have more foot traffic in the downtown district and then the west district, you know, we tend to have more foot traffic, and sometimes those lead to more pedestrian type incidents. But and then just maybe a side note, this year in 2026 is already the same trend has kind of continued along those lines. So we have ramped up. Some of our increases have been focused on those issue areas or problem areas.
Yeah, I think looking at, you know, what categories and if they're increasing, decreasing, and being able to take measures accordingly is key. I know the Phoenix
Yeah.
area in general is not very good. If you're a pedestrian or bicyclist, your problem is very, I think it's the worst in the nation.
Sure. And
I have concerns also as we're populating, gaining density in West Mesa, that we are aware of when these numbers are slipping or getting worse and what we can do to prevent them.
well, yeah, and it's highlighted on the slide. We actually did have a decrease of pedestrians, particularly on when comparing 24 to 25, and then obviously it's too early to decide this year, but it is an issue that I would say we've been tackling through a bunch of different strategies. And
Yeah, and then as well as, you know, the traffic, if it's red light running or if it's you know, freeway incidents we don't calculate, right? Because that's not our property.
I'm sorry, what was the?
On the freeway, the accidents,
we don't-
those aren't calculated because there's not City of Mesa property.
No, we don't, I don't have
So
that
these are
on.
just in the interior of the city.
Right,
You know,
right.
if they're speed related, if they're red light, you know, related or.
Yeah, and then to that point, you know, with our, we usually about mid-year, we get a really comprehensive analysis, and I know our transportation folks also share information when we really look at what are the causational factors, you know, is it inattention, is it speed, is it a particular intersection, is it all of those things, and then as those things come out, we're able to make adjustments. And we talk about, we always talk about data-driven approaches, and traffic is no different. What we do in traffic is particularly for like enforcement activities, we look at where the crashes are happening on a several month period and also on a daily and weekly basis, and then we overlay where our enforcement activities at. So we have kind of two separate maps, and we overlay where we're doing those activities at.
One of my concerns as far as fatalities is, I've asked for the data in the past, I don't remember the exact numbers and stuff, that like when you look at homicides and fatalities on our streets, it's very equivalent. And, you know, so it's just an area like, you feel like the ones on the streets, you know, what can we be more aggressive, you know, prevent? I know you're doing a lot of work, but I just want to emphasize, like, deaths on our streets is very, very unfortunate. It's not intentional. It's just things that happen, and how we can, you know, be more effective or work together in various ways of understanding what those are and how we can prevent them.
Sure, and I think to your point, I think the education piece of it is hyper important to that, where we look at putting messages out when we see things like, we talk about safe crossing, which is using the crosswalk, where, you know, vehicle drivers are expecting to see foot traffic, and especially in some of those more dense areas.
Chief, Ms. Taylor, you have a question?
Hi, thank you. I was just curious to know, when you say you offer, I have two questions. When you say you do education, you offer education, is this more at the GAIN events, or are you doing this throughout the city? Like, how is that provided, and where are you holding these sessions to give people more information around how to just be safer drivers in their local areas and around our city?
So multiple media, we will go through media outlets. We also, for like civilian motor safety courses, we partner with a local business to host those kind of those situations. We also do car seat events, which are off-site locations. We do video campaigns. We just launched what we call a monthly minute, which is focusing on the first couple iterations were motorcycle safety, motorcycle awareness. So if it's social media on a video platform, we also do in person. So I would say any way we could get the message out, that's the way we prefer.
Thank you. And then my other question was, when we're looking at the numbers, particularly for just traffic accidents in general, I'm guessing that you're trending in your data analytics and your collection of information as to whether or not, if you have just more police presence in certain areas, maybe motorcycle cops or just traffic officers that are posted for a while, do you see a pretty drastic decrease in traffic incidents for an extended amount of time in those regions after someone's been present physically?
Yeah, I think to that point, yes. I mean, as I mentioned before, we track, when we look at, I probably should have mentioned this part of it, we also look at the after effects. So if we do what we call a wolf pack, where we bring a lot of traffic resources to an area, we tend to see that that traffic calming, the message gets out. And one thing that we had done, particularly to the electric vehicles, was what we call the operation in District 6, where we focused really heavily on that, on an educational standpoint. And we did see some behavior changes. I don't know if it shifted to another area, but to answer your question, I think that's an accurate statement.
We moved it north.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. And could we say that that's a preventative measure instead of having a reactive presence there? Does the Mesa Police Force offer the preventative measure of just wolf packing in certain regions to kind of just remind people of your presence and of the need to obey traffic laws so that we can be preventing future incidents just by having more presence in an area before those incidents could occur?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, traffic resources are finite, and we deploy them as strategic as we can based on that data-driven. But you're correct. And interestingly, we write considerably more warnings than we do citations also. So, I think that piece of the educational piece is also beneficial. But
Okay, so what you're saying is you need more police officers on the ground.
Council member, I will take as many police officers as you give, as you allocate.
Yeah, okay. Thank you for answering my questions. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mr. Heredia?
I think this in line with Councilmember Taylor's questions around like figuring out what's the issue that's causing these and how we are deploying our resources to that. I wonder if this is something that we're looking at, how like we aggregate more of that data and be proactive in other ways, specifically with PD and maybe transportation, using AI to maybe aggregate and analyze a little bit better, and then figuring out other preventative pieces if it's, example of red lights or turn signals, or if it's speeding, or so you mentioned, Chief Spicer, on the data-driven pieces. Are we looking at those kinds of opportunities to also further enhance our deployment resources here for this.
Yeah, I think we've been exceptional over the years at using technology as it, relates to doing our job better and being more efficient, whether it's cameras in parks or, leveraging the real-time crime center or drones or something like that. So I think it's always something we're looking at on a monthly, daily basis.
Are we looking at like aggregating better the data? I know we looked at traffic incidents recently with Ian and others, and it seemed like it was a little hodgepodge as far as the data being collected by PD and maybe traffic, and so trying to figure out like what's a better way to aggregate and maybe analyze that information better to involve maybe different departments as well in that mission that we have to lower the traffic incidents in our city.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly the traffic coordination, the main mission of that traffic coordination meetings, transportation coordination meetings. It has transportation, PD, Mesa Fire Medical, PIO. So everybody has a little bit of a role in it, and that's the purpose of that, is to get the group in the room and talk about issues that, whether they're roadway design or roadway enforcement issues, we can all share information about what we're doing, and then adjust our strategy accordingly.
Okay. And just a follow up, maybe for later as far as data, do you have specific with the red dots? Is there a specific like table that you have of what caused these accidents in these areas? Don't have to share right now, but maybe for reference as far as what do these kind of look like as far as what happened?
Yeah, there's a significant amount of data behind each red dot. The things that I may not be able to say, especially as it goes later into 2025, would be something like impairment. Frequently, we're waiting on lab results or something like that to come up that takes more than 3 or 4 months normally, but there is significant data behind each red dot on the map.
Okay.
Mayor Freeman, Councilmember Hurdy, Councilmember Duff. What we can do is we can produce that data and get it to you. Includes stuff like where it's happening, time of day, pedestrians, bicycles, motorcycles, electric motorcycles, and get as much information as we can. Some of the software solutions that we have come across the council in the past 6 months are designed to capture this data. So we are looking at solutions. We're in the process of bringing them on to help capture all this data. So when we get together, all the experts get together with city transportation, the police department, we can have a little bit better of a storytelling. So perhaps we can attack this issue from a city perspective much more effectively.
Perfect. That works.
Go ahead, Ms. Goforth.
So you will get the data for, I'm just really pretty much interested in what happened in my district on those dots, if I could get that specific information. Somehow Vice Mayor already knows every dot and what happened.
Not every dot, there's like 3, I know.
Oh, well,
But they're
I would
framed
like
as
that information, please. I know you all have done a lot of enforcement, and I really appreciate it, especially in District 5. There's been some hotspot speeding areas that you've really attacked, and so thank you for your efforts. But we only have so much manpower, and it's kind of like whack-a-mole. You sit there, and people slow down, you leave, and they speed back up. So I appreciate the three-prong approach of engineering, enforcement, and education, but I have to agree with Councilmember Duff that unless we make significant changes on our roadways, we can never have enough manpower for enforcement. That's way too costly. So we do have to be serious about some of the changes. I know the Safe Streets for All is going to make some left turn only signals, which I think will be very helpful and help with safety. But I would like to see us really, really focus in on what we can do to our roadways to make them safer long-term without police manpower. I'm also interested, you gave us, and this is not just from PD, but it would be citywide. So we know where we stand as far as the crime rate, where do we stand as far as the traffic? I'm curious. Cities that are similar to us, I don't know, is 40 high? Is 40 low? I have no context for that. Do you have a little bit of insight? And if not, can we get that, Scott? Can you tell us, like, how do we compare to other cities our size as far as our traffic collision fatalities and accidents?
Mayor.
There's a lot to that question, though, too. I'll just, if I can interrupt you, like I said, city, not every city our size has the type of medical infrastructure either that we have. So having a level 1 trauma center can really drive down those numbers, increase survival rates. Mesa didn't have a trauma center for a long time, so it had probably a higher travel rate or a fatality rate than others, whereas, you know, the number of paramedics in the community, the trauma centers, that type of thing are really starting to positively impact these numbers as well. But it's really, I think, the speed is the other issue with here, because let's face it, it's not just Mesa. The entire valley, when you look at some of these other cities, back here, Milwaukee, I think an arterial street in Milwaukee is probably 2 lanes wide.
Yeah.
Right, whereas in Arizona, when the first thing I noticed when I came to Arizona, when I was shipped here in the Air Force, was 1, how well manicured the freeways were, and 2, how wide the streets were. Because an arterial street in Arizona, to Jen's point, looks like a freeway where I came from in Western New York. So I think there's a lot of factors that kind of fall in line here with impacting the fatality rate, no pun intended.
Yeah, but that's fine. I understand what you're saying about fatalities, but accidents in general would be interesting. And I don't think you put your head in the sand that it's a different landscape in the Midwest or the East. I mean, it is what it is, but there are things that we can do to improve it.
Yeah, but
there are.
we do have to focus on the problem here. So the solutions in Milwaukee or Rochester, New York are not
Yeah,
going
but
to
you
be
could say the same
necessarily
thing
the
about
same
crime
here.
fighting. So,
Yeah,
and we
it
do
really-
have those numbers.
you
So
can, yeah.
anyway, we'll go on and on. We'll take this
That gave you
offline.
30 seconds to kind of.
Mayor and Councilmember Goforth, to answer that question, I guess there's a twofold to it. Yes, on an annual basis, we get a publication from it's called the Arizona Motor Crash Vehicle Facts, and it basically breaks down jurisdictions and causational factors and things like that. For 2025, we don't anticipate that to come out until like mid-year, because this is aggregate, right? And year over year, other cities, surrounding cities, and again, I don't want to compare us to, you know, a much smaller jurisdiction, but there have been similar increases in other cities, surrounding cities. But I can get that data and get that back to you.
Mr. Adams?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple comments. I think one of the things that we do here that is really good is we have that delay between the red light and the green light of a few seconds, and that doesn't exist in many other cities. It certainly doesn't exist anywhere in North Carolina where I frequently go. So I think that's a great thing. We've done it for years and obviously should continue it. You know, I think Mesa PD does an outstanding job here. This is a difficult situation. Anyone can drive around our city and you can pretty much identify what I think is the primary problem. We have some idiots behind the wheel who don't belong behind the wheel, okay? Folks who think they need to drag race at every stoplight, folks who think that 30 miles an hour means 55. So I think you've got a great challenge here. I think for the resources you can put to it, you're doing a great job. My only suggestion would be, and we've talked about this before, there are probably intersections where the accident rate is much higher than others, and we've got some great people in transportation who can probably study that flow, that timing, whatever's going on there. That I'm not smart enough to figure that out, but somebody is. Why are we having a higher incident at this intersection versus that one? So I think it's good that we continue to analyze this stuff. I love the data-driven approach that you use. And I would just say thanks. You're doing a great job. I
I want to end with this. Hearing from council, Mr. manager, city manager, it might be best that every quarter or every 6 months, a report is sent to council about the fatalities, what drove the fatalities, and that way that council member can work with police department and kind of get a understanding of how we can work better in each respective district. So I think if you sent something out quarterly instead of annually, that council could digest the information, because we're talking about data, and data is going to drive the mission. And I think having that info is, you have it. If things are delayed because of a BAC, well, okay, I get it, but at the end of the day, there was a fatality there.
Yeah, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council, absolutely. We're happy to do that for you.
Is that okay,
Yeah.
Scott?
Yeah, Mayor, Council, absolutely. I'll work with the chief and figure out the right cadence to get that to you more frequently. And you're right. I mean, this is a national issue. I mean, the whole genesis of the Safe Streets for All program was the fact of a national trend towards these kind of issues occurring in communities all across the country. So we're trying to deal with it. Obviously, the way the valley's developed and the way our street network is also presents some challenges that you've all discussed. There certainly are things that we do. PD is very proactive of working with engineering and transportation on coming up with solutions on areas that they see as hot spots and trouble spots. And of course, transportation's looking at mid-block crossings and hawks and other things that can help the pedestrian experience. There's also, I mean, as Councilmember Adams alluded to, drivers who are making bad decisions. There's pedestrians that are making bad decisions. We probably see it every day. I know I do as I'm driving around, and that's a huge part of the problem as well. And so you're right. That doesn't mean that we throw up our hands and do nothing, and we're not. I mean, as the chiefs have alluded to this morning, but we do, also have to hope that human behavior is changed, and that is something that's very hard for anyone sitting at this dais today to try to change. But there's certainly things that we can do and should do to try to bring this number down.
Okay.
I would also think in the AI world, there are probably some softwares that are coming about, and in time, we don't want to jump into the first thing, but at the time that it makes sense, they can evaluate our traffic flow, the average speeds, the volume, the conflicts, and take the data from all the accident reports and everything, and, can consolidate. So you have a full 360 of volume, when, time, what kind of collision. I would think that in time we could have this consolidated view, because right now there's so many factors that can play into an area, and I think I'm looking for that opportunity. I know in traffic management there's some AI opportunities. Again, it has to be at the right time, the right product, and doing the right work that we need. But I think there's on the horizon some ways that we can really dive deeper and understand citywide, what is happening with our traffic. And I know we're talking about PD, but it does, we're kind of getting stuck on this slide, but, we're up 330, accidents, and that's not a reflection of PD. I'm not saying that at all. It's about traffic management and understanding it more. So thank you.
Okay, where did we leave off at? Who's next, Chief?
It's going to be me.
All right.
Well, good morning, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council members. Krista York, the Fiscal Manager. And I'm going to go over some budgetary figures with you this morning. I've arranged this by bureau, so that way it's not as busy of a slide, and I'll kind of go through what rolls up into each of these bureaus and then go over some of the variances you'll see within that. The Executive Services Bureau, that encompasses both our chief's office and fiscal management area. And you'll notice that within the current fiscal year, 25-26, and revised budget as well as the year-end estimate, it's higher than the other two outliers. That's because we have O&M for our PD headquarters that's currently being renovated. So there's $9 million in there, and we'll be carrying over those unused funds to next year too as the renovation continues. So that's what's driving up the current year figures there. The Strategic Initiative Bureau, it includes community relations and our planning and research areas. And then operations is where our patrol districts are housed. And that area really highlights the year-over-year impact from our merits and benchmarking. So if you recall from fiscal year 24-25 into 25-26, we had the 10% plus benchmarking, so that increased the current year's budget, and we also have the merits going in to next fiscal year. The Operations Support Bureau now is a large bureau that encompasses many, many activities. It includes our metro area, which has our aviation unit, the Fusion Center, Real-Time Crime Center, our SROs, the park rangers. It also includes our holding facility, evidence, and municipal security. And then it additionally includes communications. And from the variance you see from the 46 million from last fiscal year to see the drop into the current fiscal year and next, that's due to the splitting of 911 and dispatch. And so that's accounting for that decrease there. The Investigations Bureau has our professional standards, criminal investigations, as well as our Special Operations Division. And then finally, our Professional Services Bureau, it encompasses human resources, which is our hiring unit, technical services, which we refer to as PDIT, our Criminal Justice Information Division, which was previously known as Records, and then also our training division. Now, training is the area where the recruits are expensed to. The variance you see from 25-26 into 26-27 is expected, and that represents the unfunded portion of our officers in training as they go through the academy. We have a slide coming up down the road that will discuss more of this pipeline that we have. But this variance is expected, and that's what we anticipate. And then finally, within Professional Services Bureau, again, you'll see a higher figure for fiscal year 24-25. That's because it previously encompassed forensics, which is now part of the Mesa Public Safety Support Department. And so that is no longer reflective in the 25-26 figures or the 26-27 figures. And then finally, the total line between our current year revised budget and our year-end estimate, that variance there is due to our net projected overage and personal services, which is a combination of many ins and outs. It includes some of the negatives in there would be our annual vacation payout, our separation payments when employees separate and they get their unused vacation. And then also that unfunded portion of our officers in training. And then on the flip side, some of the positives coming in, we have some sworn and civilian or professional staff vacancy savings. Any other questions on that, or we'll jump into our budgetary reductions?
Mr. Adams.
I do have a question. I'm sorry if I didn't follow you closely enough. On your Professional Services Bureau, you're going from what you project at 62.1 down to 49.5. Help me understand again, where did that 11 end up going?
Our officers in training, so we have, and like I said, we have a slide coming up, where we have a pipeline where they're in unbudgeted positions, however, they are partially funded. And so this is, because it takes 11 months to get an officer, about close to a year to get an officer through training, that pipeline allows us to start hiring people, getting them trained, our officers, so that way when we have anticipated attrition and known separations, we can try to correlate that as closely as possible, fill those vacancies.
So you have folks in the pipeline that haven't hit the expense line yet?
Correct.
What expense line are they hitting while they're in training?
So they're part of our training unit. We hire them in our prep program, our police pre-recruit program, and then we, all the way through the academy into field training, they are expensed to training until they are fully solo on the street.
Okay, so do you anticipate that number staying around 50? Or is that going to jump back up next year when we look at it, when they're on full pay and benefits?
Yes, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Councilmember Adams, they run us close to about 10 million per year, depending on how many we are hiring, and we are budgeted for close to 4 million for them. So they do account for about 6 to 7 million of our annual overage.
Okay.
But again, we have savings in our sworn vacancies that help offset those expenditures.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that. Don't get me wrong, I'm not complaining about that. I think you need to be as staffed as you need to be, but I see how the numbers work. Thank you.
Great. Next slide.
All right. So going straight into our expenditure reduction. So our general fund target reduction was 4.4 million. We're proposing a 1.7 million reduction for next fiscal year of 26-27. This is kind of a high-level summary of those different areas it's hitting. In our future slides, we'll kind of go into more depth. For the bottom four. The top one is we propose to eliminate our recruit signing bonus, which would save us $315,000. And then we have reductions in expenditures, some civilianization, and then professional and sworn staff reductions, which we have additional slides on to discuss. All right.
And the sworn staff reductions?
Yes.
You have a slide on
Yes,
that? Okay.
yes, sir. Yes, Mayor.
Great. Go ahead.
Okay. So our expenditure reductions, they consist of the following three items, which is the elimination of our psychological reviews for professional staff, and then a reduction in our project management services, as well as in any new CCTV requests coming in. And that totals $237,000. All right.
Can you tell, what's the CCTV requests? What does that mean? New requests coming in?
Good morning, Mayor, Council. Dom Sterling here. In terms of that reduction, we're looking at $150,000, and that's coming out of our PDIT budget. And what we're talking about, this isn't related to any of the flock or other technology. It's just we're saying that each respective department will have to fund their own purchase of the CCTV. So it's not going to impact anything that's already installed for city currently. It's not traffic cameras. It's not photo radar. It's nothing that's city infrastructure.
Okay.
Actually, on that, can you give me an example of a project management reduction?
So a couple of examples, Vice Mayor, recent examples that we have, they're projects that were funded through the allocations that we're talking about. Camera installations at MCHI, we had those, and then we had some enhanced security measures at communications. Additionally, in this cut, some other examples were a server for Live 911 for the Real-Time Crime Center, monitors and computers for the Real-Time Crime Center. So those are some examples of what would get, other areas would have to purchase.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Civilianization. Historically, we have been very successful in implementing the civilianization within the police department. And we were able to identify an additional 3 sworn positions that we feel would benefit from civilianization, where basically you take a sworn position, we would eliminate that position, create a civilian one to perform those same duties. The impact would be a +3 on professional staff, -3 on sworn, but what it would save us, so net FTEs are the same. However, we are seeing $152,000 savings if we civilianize a community engagement detective to a community engagement coordinator, a special events sergeant to a management assistant one, and then a hiring detective to a hiring coordinator. All right. Moving on to our professional staff reductions. The FTE count is 6.5. These are all vacant positions, currently vacant positions, and it includes a part-time non-benefited firearms instructor, 3 park rangers, 2 civilian investigation specialists, and a police investigator 1. Any questions related to this?
So right now, we're not filling those positions. Okay. Thank you. Carry on.
And then our sworn staff reductions.
Good morning, Mayor, Council. Assistant Chief Jeff Cutler over the Investigations Bureau. So these 3 positions sit in our Special Operations Division, which is in the Investigations Bureau. These 3 crime gun intelligence detectives was a program we started back in '24. The original intent was to have 3 detectives, 3 professional staff. They'll collect and analyze shell casings and guns, and then develop leads for detectives to go follow up on The original intent was to have these 3 detectives do all that. We have not, we're in the process of hiring our professional staff, so they haven't come on board yet. So the detectives have been filling in the role of the analyst work. With our bringing on the 3 professional staff, and at the same time, they're doing the analysis work. Those cases, those leads are being sent out to the detectives around the city. So the functionality will not change. The detectives will go back to other assignments within special operations. Professional staff will come on board, do the actual analysis of those casings, and provide the leads out to detectives around the department. So in essence, the functionality will stay the same, just those detectives will not be fully realized into being a self-contained unit of investigators of these crime gun leads that are developed through our NIBIN process.
I have a question about that. This is Councilmember Taylor.
Go ahead.
So are you saying that the change between the professional staff and coming on to take this position and the detectives going back out into the field, that change in salary is what's creating this reduction?
Mayor, Vice Mayor, Councilmember, those positions are already funded. Those 3 positions are already funded, so already in our budget. And this is straight reduction of 3 sworn positions. So those are already accounted for. So it wouldn't be an offset. This amount is actual reductions of 3 sworn positions.
But is it a reduction of 3 sworn positions? They're already filled that we're putting professional staff in? Is that what you're saying? I guess I'm a little confused.
Well, in essence, there are 3 positions. 1 is already filled. 2 are in the process of being filled. They're already budgeted spots. So when we bring those on, that work the detectives are doing will not be done by those professional staff. And then those detectives, through the reduction, will be reassigned to some other functions within the Special Operations Division.
Okay, I got it. So you're just saying those 3 detectives is the reduction here. They're not losing their jobs. They're just moving outside of what the crime gun intelligence. Is that right?
Yeah, Mayor, Councilmember Taylor, that is correct. There's other vacant positions within the Special Operations. They'll move into those positions.
Okay.
I look at it as backfilling into this area with a sworn person, and then once you get your professional staff in, they will go back into their other positions.
Correct. That's correct.
So you're backfilling and then you're moving them out eventually.
Yes. The original intent was to have those detectives do the in-house investigations, but we have never been able to do that, so we are sending them out to detectives around and that'll continue on.
Okay. Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. Next slide.
All right. And then our budget adjustment request consists of a vehicle for a mid-year lieutenant position we added. So that has a one-time cost of $75,000 and then the ongoing cost.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council, reminder, Dom Sterling, one of the assistant chiefs here. I'm going to talk about what we've already brought up. Ms. York has talked about this pipeline slide, so we're already a little bit familiar with that. So with the support of city management, city council, we've been allotted 125 positions beyond what we've been authorized for the 845 that are used as a pipeline to recruit for and train the police officers to fill the budgeted positions as they become available. This in turn keeps the department's vacancy rate at a minimum. It typically takes close to, we said, 11 months or a year for a police officer to become fully trained. And so having this pipeline provides for the projected timing of the police officers to reach the full solo status with our projected attrition. We want to lead this slide, however, with recognizing and thanking City Council and City leadership for supporting this approach that we're talking about, and really Ms. York's foresight on this. And we've been able to strategically overhire police officer recruits. That decision has been critical to our success and clearly demonstrates your strong commitment to public safety. The financial strategy has allowed us to stabilize our staffing levels, and what we're seeing now is actually a decrease in those pipeline numbers. That's the blue line that's going down here. And that's a positive indicator, even though it's going down. It means we're successfully keeping pace with the projected attrition. When we look at the trends from 2021 through the current fiscal year, both our pipeline and our authorized sworn staffing has steadily increased. At the same time, our pipeline has expanded from 60, as you see to the left, to a high of 90 in 2024. And that's largely in response to the anticipated retirements and the drop program completions that had started in 2019, so 5 years forward. That number is now projected to decrease to 57 by the fiscal year 2027. And those numbers indicate that we're leveling off and reaching the capacity for which we're currently authorized. Again, to me, to us, it's a positive sign. Overall, the morale is high, our culture is strong and positive. Our employees value working here because they have the tools and the resources they need. We've talked about that, both in the field and through the expanded wellness support. They find their work rewarding and appreciate their elected officials. City management prioritize public safety for this community. It's also important to go back in time to recognize the role of our city's residents. From 2018, when Mesa voters approved the public safety sales tax increase that's dedicated to police, fire, and medical services. That investment has directly supported the progress you see today and reflects a strong community support for public safety across your respective districts and the city. Those positions are highlighted on the bottom. Those are the white numbers above that yellow line, and they reflect the 84 public safety sales tax funded spots from that vote back then. Assistant Chief Cutler's already talked about this, but regarding our most recent assignment for reviewing the budget, we did conduct a careful analysis of what we had, and the proposal was reduction of the 6 sworn position, which will bring us from 845 to 839 for fiscal year 26-27. To accomplish this, we've talked about the reassignment of the 3 detectives into existing vacancies and converting the remaining 3 positions into professional staff roles. The city support of our overhire strategy, this pipeline has allowed us to maintain stability, manage our attrition, and build a strong hiring pipeline over the past several years. Because of that, we're effectively reducing crime and increasing citizen safety and engagement with our community. We understand the reductions come with the impacts, but we remain committed, of course, all of us are here, to reducing crime and enhancing our public safety and serving our community. Thank you.
You're welcome. You brought up the public safety sales tax, and, we have increasing costs in our public safety areas. Is there any talk, are we talking about maybe the sales tax, public safety sales tax increase or anything, in the future? Because, it's important to continue to support our public safety personnel, and that's a citywide initiative. What are your thoughts on that, Mr. Butler?
Yeah, Mayor and Council, and I appreciate everything that PD has done to play their part in helping us dig out of this hole that the legislature created for us. And so, as we've talked about, we've made a lot of progress and we're seeing positive trends as we look at the forecast on that. One of the challenges we have, though, is, getting out of that hole and getting back to the black is really maintaining status quo, right? Maintaining what we have here with more incremental growth occurring after that. So we're definitely going to have some challenges, I think, to keep up with a city that's continuing to grow and expand without some additional resources long-term to that. We'll also talk about, Mr. Cost is going to be here on Monday as part of our study session to talk about, as we're wrapping up our MOU process that went really well with public safety labor representatives, and it is, in order to stay competitive, we have that presents financial challenges to us to make sure that we have the resources that we need to make sure that we are treating and our fire and police personnel, our sworn personnel, and our professional staff, but in particular on the MOU on the sworn staff competitively with our peer agencies. And so we'll talk about that a little bit more on Monday, and you'll visibly see the financial impact that just staying competitive has on the general fund and on our ability to provide these resources. So Mayor, it definitely is going to be strained in the future if we don't have some additional revenue at some point.
Yeah, that's what we call benchmarking, right? I mean, as we benchmark other communities, and it's just a factor in keeping personnel here, especially our public safety personnel.
Absolutely.
With that, Mr. Redia?
Real quick, I know we, back in 2020, we were worried on the drops as far as the amount, both in fire and police, the anticipated drops there. Do we feel, I know we've gone through quite a bit of hiring over the last 5 years. Do we feel it's balanced throughout the agency, the department, as far as having enough folks that can kind of move up the ladder? Because I don't know how much you can move up, a recent graduate to a lieutenant or sergeant, right? And so do we feel confident in having enough folks that can move up the ladder of the chain of command there you know, Chief Butler, you have like, what, 30 years? You started at like 10 years old, I think. And then everybody else is also, I think, in those 20 years. But just a question. And then my other point, what's the percentage of civilian to what is it called, sworn? So can you talk a little bit on that?
Absolutely, Mayor, Councilmember Heredia. A couple questions there. So, many of you have heard us talk about creating a police department that is unique to other police departments in the nation. Overwhelmingly, our police department is more balanced, and we have non-sworn members doing jobs that in other traditional police departments sworn members would do. The goal has been since 2018, 2019, when Mr. Cost was the chief of police, a 60-40 balance. So 60% of our workforce is sworn and 40% is non-sworn. And what we propose today keeps us in that exact range. So as we went through this process back from November, we made an effort to balance the way that we compress our organization, but making sure that we continue to provide the levels of service that we need to provide for our community. So we are staying at that. Circling back to your original question, that you talk about retention and you talk about succession planning and leadership development. Why you see 57 on this slide from our pipeline is because more people are staying. Where we had a significant number of people enter drop in 2017 and 2018, that's what really impacted our recruiting efforts. Even though we were still getting much better than everybody else applicants, we were hiring people at a better rate than any of our comparable cities in the state, because so many people elected in those years to enter drop. We were losing people on the top end. The extension of drop helped keep people as well for us, so that helped a little bit. But now that those extensions are falling off, and we don't have the large number of people that have entered in the mandatory drop retirement program, so it's helping us, and that's why we go from 82 to 57, because we know the people that are here are choosing to stay longer. They're choosing to continue to work, as opposed to retiring as early as they absolutely can retire. Succession planning has been and will continue to be our highest priority. What we do as an organization, what we have been doing for 6 or 7 years now, is identifying training that develops our human beings so they're ready to take next level leadership. We have budgeted through our budget every year, going back 7 years, $200,000, and then we track every leader in our organization, what command schools they've been to, what further education they've been to. Every one of the assistant chiefs has in their annual performance review a requirement for them to individually sit with people and mentor them on career development. And that involves, what are you reading? What are you doing? What are your career goals? Every one of the assistant chiefs that have been up here get measured on how effective they are at developing the next generation of leadership. So it's incredibly important to us.
And Mayor, Councilmember, maybe I can just add to the chief's comments as well, is that one of the great things about drop is the predictability of knowing the numbers, right? And that both on the police and fire side, we can plan our academies, we know what the numbers are because that's a date certain. What we saw after COVID was that unexpected departures, especially on the police side, of just the environment that was happening nationally at the time in policing and other things like that. But that has stabilized, and so now we're back to a situation with planned drops, of which the chief and his team, and also on the fire side, can do a great job of planning for that when they know that there is a date certain that a vacancy is going to happen. And then as was alluded to with the overhires and being able to get people on board early, we try to make that a seamless transition when we can predict and expect those drop positions are going to become vacant.
I have a budgeting question on, so you have a maximum number of sworn personnel in the department. How far below that are we?
Mayor, Vice Mayor, and one of my
Position-wise.
chiefs can correct me. My last update on that, we had a 4% vacancy rate, so half of what a lot of the comparable agencies in the Valley have. So
Is that about 30-something?
it is about 30-something.
35, maybe?
41.
40, yeah.
41.
30 to 40. What's really cool for us is that pipeline, right? So even though we may not have those individuals in the seats at the moment, we have, 82 people hired beyond what our allocation is. And that's a testament of your support, that's a testament of Mr. Butler's support, and then our community support, because that's not inexpensive, but it's absolutely essential to us being as effective as we are.
Well, as I said in the past, it's non-negotiable for me. I want to make sure our public safety personnel, sworn and professional staff are up to our standards, meeting our policing needs in our community. That's what our residents expect. So with that, did you have a comment?
Well, I was just just so I can understand. So the 845, so for instance, for June 2026, 845 sworn and 82 is on top of that. That's the pipeline that you're talking about. Okay, yeah. And so then we assume a few will retire out of that. That's why, okay. I just thought that's what you were saying, and then just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Yeah, since Mayor, Councilmember Goforth, since 2014, Chris and I worked together in 2014, and she came up with the spreadsheet that we still use to this day. And what it does is it maps out people that are eligible to retire. It created an equation of how many people unexpectedly retire every year. Generally, it would be, historically it was like 17. What Mr. Butler, and it was a great point that you brought up, Mr. Butler, what he brought up is, post-COVID, we saw that number go from 17 to 27 to 42. So it was significant. And I think it's a direct reflection of, perception of policing at the time. But those numbers have dropped back down. So we track when people have to leave because they're in drop. We track how often they actually stay. Like what we know in our organization is when a member enters drop, generally about year 3, if they stay to year 3, then they go all 5 years. But 50% of them, and this is probably a year and a half old now, 50% of them in the past, by year 2, they're like, I got enough, I'm good, I'm ready to go. So, but those numbers have stabilized, and it's much better off. And it's it's a testament to the leadership of this team and how, and previous leadership and how the organization, this community, and everybody feels about them. They feel happy to stay.
Well, one other thing that's helped is a 2-year extension in the drop. So a lot of personnel, both fire and police, have chosen to stay an extra 2 years because they've figured out, maybe I wasn't ready to leave in 5 years, and financially, whatever it might be. But that's been to our benefit.
Yes, Mayor.
But then after 7 years, you do have to leave. None of you are in the drop. You are, okay, Chief Desmond. All right, we have one more slide. Can we wrap it up?
Yes, so that will be me. I get the opportunity to talk about overtime trends and fiscal stewardship. So over the past 3 fiscal years, you can see that overtime has steadily declined across both sworn and professional staff. And I'm just going to point out what's on the slide. So we see 217,000 hours. So we're talking hours, not dollars here. So 217,000 hours in 23-24 for sworn, and 50,000 hours of overtime for professional staff. You can see the drop down to 175,000 for sworn, then 43,000 for professional staff. Now for 25-26, we are actually projecting, right? Because the year's not over. The numbers we used were from back in December. And in December, we stood at 75,100 for sworn overtime hours and 18,000 for professional staff. So that puts us on track for this 147,000 hours to 35,000 hours for professional staff. So you can clearly see that we are making efforts in reduction of overtime. But these reductions, it's important to point out that they are not accidental. They are deliberate reductions. They're a result of intentional management controls implemented at the first line supervisor level, so your sergeants that are out there managing the folks. And then it is reinforced at the lieutenant and the commander's level. It's enhanced review, tighter control processes, smarter scheduling, and better alignment to staffing operational needs. This leads to significant improved efficiency in the deployment of our resources. So this reduction has occurred despite ongoing staffing pressures, increased call volume, because we do have that happening, expanded special events, and other rising operational demands that come out of that. And so while the department has absorbed these demands that are placed on the police department, we continue to deliver service, high-quality service, reducing overtime reliance, demonstrating strong fiscal discipline and operational oversight. There are things that are beyond our control when it comes to overtime. If we have a critical incident, if we have call-outs, if we have protests or civil unrest, if we have politicians arrive in our city, right? Those things are beyond our control. The marathon, you know, it's demands to be a big city. This is what happens in big city, but we are still implementing a very controlled, paying attention to where we're seeing our overtime, what we're doing about it, how do we manage it while maintaining service levels where they need to be. And so our commanders put together reports every month for us. Those go through the assistant chiefs of the affected bureaus. The assistant chiefs then put a report together. Then that comes to me. Then I take all that data and I put it together and I give it to the chief. And then the chief sends it on up the chain to show that we are paying attention. And that is the most critical piece of managing overtime.
Vice Mayor? Yeah, let's go for it.
Referring back to slide 13, I just had an overall question on the park rangers. We're eliminating 3 vacant positions. I know that the park rangers were an issue a while ago, but what is the vision for that organization moving forward? Because obviously we want to make sure our parks are safe and usable for families, but with this reduction, that's a little bit concerning.
Of course, thank you, Vice Mayor, Mayor and Council. Speaking to the park rangers, so if you would recall, in about 2 fiscal years ago, we actually added 4 park rangers, and the intent at that time, obviously there was different rank structure at that time, but when we added the park rangers, it was a supervisor and 3 park rangers. And the intent was to put one of the rangers in the real-time crime center to do the business associated with the parks, with the increase in the cameras that we had coming on board with the parks, then to add a supervisor, and then really 2 park rangers to tackle what was referred to as the inner city parks. Really, that's some of the higher density parks or larger parks on the west side, Pioneer, you know, those kind of parks, Reed Park. So with the transition to PD in late last year or mid last year, obviously what we did was we converted the supervisor position to a sworn. So we added a sworn supervisor, which really covers that position. And then frankly, the real-time park ranger never materialized. I'm not sure what was behind that, but since then, we've now have 24/7 scheduling in a real-time crime center. So really, I guess those 2 positions are, I don't want to say they're not needed, but they're not needed. And then with the inner city parks, a couple of things that we did some schedule adjustments to, we don't need them here till 1 in the morning, right? We looked at how the schedules and then how they were deployed. We deploy, and for lack of a better word, it's an east-west central kind of deployment where we have park rangers that are holistically responsible for different areas, not just one inner city park, if that makes sense. So I guess to your point, with the continuity of operations, and then some of the things we looked at also was increases in the unsheltered through some of the data sources that were available. And then recent data would suggest that there is less unsheltered folks that are in some of the, utilizing some of the parks. So with that, we feel very comfortable, I feel very comfortable that these are vacant positions. We're in the process of hiring our additional park ranger staff, but with the addition, I think we, you know, and also with technology too, we have now cameras in a lot of these parks. I don't know that there's the same need that there was 2 or 3 years ago. And again, if we need to pivot, we can always pivot. But speaking to the park ranger reduction, that's the best explanation I can give you.
Yeah. So there's basically just been
a change in some of the organization where some of these positions aren't needed anymore because they've been absorbed by the police department, and we have opportunities for new technologies. At least in my district, my concern is with some of the parks out there. Let's just say that the Wi-Fi signal isn't the greatest for getting connection to cameras into the parks, and that's something I think we need to work with IT. And as chair of public safety, I might want to have a presentation on park crime, which direction that's going, the park rangers, and maybe even roll IT into that and make sure our parks remain safe. So.
Yeah, Mayor, Vice Mayor, as Chief Spicer just alluded to, though, this doesn't in any way diminish our commitment to the safety of the parks. It's some efficiencies that came from actually the park rangers being underneath the police department, but also as we work to fill some of those vacancies, we didn't fill those positions until the chief and his team felt that the training, the revamp of the program was completely completed and underway, and they were in a good situation then to go forward and fill some of those remaining vacancies. That's going to take a while to fill those vacancies, and because of everything that was mentioned about these, we felt that it was acceptable right now to be able to take these positions, but we'll continue to monitor. We might have to add one or two positions back in the future, depending on need. So we know that this is something we may need to pivot on in a few years after we've been able to fully hire up the program, and then just see how that coordination is going and the efficiencies that have been gained from that integration inside the police department. But we're going to continue to monitor that, and this is important, I know, to everybody, that we make sure that our parks are safe.
Well, on that, real quick, I appreciate that you're capable and that you do just pivot. I mean, sometimes things, we think we go down one path and it's just not working out, and it's not a big deal to pivot. And I'm glad to see that we do that, and we are still nimble enough to do that. So appreciate that. And then on your overtime hours, so thank you for your efforts on that. This is impressive and great to see. I just wonder, do you have a target you're trying to hit that you want to share? If you don't want to share,
Mayor, Vice Mayor, Councilmember Goforth, we are budgeted a certain amount of time for overtime, so it would be great to meet that budget. But the reality is, we have demands, and as long as we're not fully staffed and still looking at like what our numbers really should be, and that's always a nuance, like how do you really tell how many sworn police officers you need to effectively impact crime and safety and make the city the best it can be for its citizens. So we're always, looking to stay within budget, but we do run a little bit over. Krista, do you want to mention what our budget is?
Yes, our current budget is $17.3 million for overtime. One of the pressures we do have on that is that an overtime hour in 1 year is not the same cost as the next year as you benchmark and add merits. So that is one of the challenges we're working within.
So the hours compared to dollars. So we look at hours because that shows efforts, and dollars are going to be what dollars are going to be. Just like the city manager mentioned, we have to stay competitive. We have to deal with inflation, all of the things. So dollars may shift, and we constantly work with OMB to, look at.
So how much over budget are we projected to be?
So for overtime, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council Member, Goforth, we are in overtime about $3 to $4 million over budget, which historically, that's just very impressive for us. I mean, it really is kudos to exec staff and to what Chief Nesbitt was talking about, where it's gone down to the, that's huge for us.
Right. I mean, I've been here for these 3 years, and I have watched, and we do appreciate your efforts on that. I know that council said, please work on that, and you went and you did it, and we appreciate that. So thank you.
Yeah, that can't be overstated enough, Mayor and Council, that, this represents millions of dollars of savings that PD has been able to effectively manage. And so kudos to the chief and the whole executive team, command staff for making this a priority. And Chief Nesbitt's right. I mean, we are responsive and reactive to a lot of situations that are outside of our control and events that are outside of our control, and public safety is number one. So we're going to have the proper staffing to make sure that those events are safe and those individuals are safe when situations arise. But there are things that the chief and his team have put in place to make sure that the overtime we can control is done responsibly, and that there's checks and balances and accountability down to the sergeant level of understanding that. And so I appreciate that culture change and emphasis that the chief and the command staff have put in that have made a huge difference in this.
Okay, I have a question on, when we're spending a lot of money on overtime, do we analyze the fact that we can hire personnel to backfill the amount we're spending in overtime? In other words, can we make savings by, I'll use the word overhiring, and then those individuals backfilling for overtime issues? Like, okay, I come from the fire department, so rovers, telestaffing, those type of things, how to reduce costs. And I guess we haven't even reached our maximum capacity yet on
We need to get there.
Phil, but maybe that conversation for me, and how
Mayor,
we can offset that.
Yeah, Mayor, we definitely look at that in situations where it's not situational. The problem is, as you're describing in fire, we have a little bit of a different dynamic when it's critical staffing and we have to have overtime in order to fill a position to be able to adequately staff a truck.
Sure.
In this situation, you think of spring training. We're not going to hire the number of officers it takes to manage the traffic and crowds at spring training for 1 month out of the year, right? And so we pay overtime for our officers to have that duty to go out and staff. And you'd see that if there was a protest and we needed to call in more people, then we're paying overtime for that. So it's a little different. I mean, not that there's situations, and there are some things, and PD does look at that if it makes sense to actually hire someone versus pay overtime. But a lot of their overtime costs are more related to events and situations or critical incidents that occur, and they need to hold over that staff that pass their normal shift.
Got it.
Okay.
Mayor, Vice Mayor,
Go ahead, Chief.
members of council, one of the other things that we do is the concept of the rover pool. You and I, Mayor, have had that conversation a number of times over the years. A few years back, what we did is created a system that requires every sworn member, detective, whoever, to have a patrol proficiency ride along in patrol. So essentially, we created a rover pool by having a policy that we've had for a long time that requires every year all the detectives to bid for a week on patrol, and then they go out and supplement patrol, offsetting overtime impacts as well. So we kind of create a rover pool. What it does is it gives the detectives connectivity with the young members of our police department, and then gets them up to date on the technologies that we have in the vehicles. If they've been a detective 5 or 6 years, technology changes, they get used to doing that again. And it just builds relationship and camaraderie. And then an intentional byproduct is it helps us a little bit with overtime. It helps us with safety because there's more men and women out there serving the community in case something really wild happens. And it's a really nice program. So in essence, it's the rover pool that you talked about, and that's one of the ways that we drive this overtime down.
Good. All right. Thank you.
And Mayor, I was just going to add, we're constantly looking at our deployment resources, and every time we have recruits coming out of the academy, where do we put them? Chief Walker will look at what's happening in the city related to calls for service, and then we are able, through technology, to better deploy resources in that manner. And then we monitor caseloads, and we monitor call-outs, and all of those things that we're trying to, better stabilize the resources that we have.
Great. Thank you.
I have one question that I meant to bring up earlier is, and previously we looked at the solving crime stats, and we didn't then, but I just wanted to mention it. I know when we did before, it's quite impressive, the crimes we were able to solve, the percentages. are quite impressive. And so are they static, or I assume with technology and other offerings, we're able to be better and better at solving crimes?
Mayor, Councilmember Duff, if you recall in 2024, specific to homicide investigations, we had 100% solve rate, clearance rate. 2025, my last check when I asked about it, it's been a couple of months, we were in the high 80th percentile, which is a little bit off from 2024. But then when you really compare it to national average, where the majority of agencies around the country are at about a 50 percentile, we're actually quite adept at making a huge difference for the victims of homicides in our community. So those solve rates, they're really important to us. What it is justice. And our role in creating a safe community is trying to prevent crimes. So we have that thriving, safe community, but also seeking justice for those individuals who become victims of crimes.
Mr. Adams.
Thank you, Mayor. First, these reduction in overtime hours that you display here are very impressive, and it says to me that PD heard council's concerns, so I think this is well done. I'm just going to echo the comment the mayor made a few minutes ago. From a very simple standpoint, it would seem to me, and I've never managed a law enforcement agency, so I don't have that expertise, but it would seem to me that there's a delta somewhere between paying overtime hours and hiring additional full-time staff to where this balances out. But I'm not going to second guess that, because I understand your application and deployment of overtime hours. But it might be something we would continue to look at, where if we're going to spend the money, maybe if we had the additional sworn staff who could focus on traffic safety when they're not at the Cubs games or whatever. Again, not trying to second guess your management of this issue, but I do have the same question, and maybe that's something we can continue to explore as we go down the road. So, thanks.
Okay. Is that it?
That's it.
Before you leave, Ms. Taylor, do you have a question or thought?
Yes, thank you. Well, first of all, I wanted to thank everyone for giving such an extensive and complete presentation.
She must be an e-smart.
You broke up, Ms. Taylor. Or the Starlink isn't working. You might be back.
Okay, can you hear me?
We can.
I'm so sorry. I might have to jump off. I had a family member call me. But I wanted to say thank you for your presentation. And I just wanted to confirm a couple things as I was listening. Number one, we are not fully staffed. Is that correct? We're not at maximum capacity.
That is correct, Ms. Taylor.
Okay. And then my other question then was, I definitely appreciate the reduction that I've seen in the overtime hours. I'm equating that to cost in my mind. But would you tell us, if out of the number of officers you currently have staffed, your sworn officers, how many hours does that break down to on an average per officer per week? Are they working like an extra 12 hours a week, 18 hours a week? Do you know?
Mayor, Councilmember Taylor, I don't think I know that answer. We can try to figure that out for you, but it varies. Some members work more overtime than others. Some members choose not to work any overtime if they could avoid it. So we could try to break it down, with the number of overtime hours, then just create an average for sworn, and that would give us about, an idea of what it would be. But we do monitor. We monitor how, members that are high overtime earners, not necessarily for the public perception aspect of it, but for wellness. What I don't want is people working every waking moment of their days and then burn out by the end of their careers and, have it negatively impact their family or their health.
Okay, that's kind of where I was going, so you preempted my thoughts. Thank you. I appreciate their willingness to do it. I know you all are probably very carefully managing the officers' mental health, if you will, along with, the number of hours they're working. Because some people are real hungry and they get excited, but as you were saying, they can burn out in the long run, and we don't want our police officers to feel exasperated before they end their career, a healthy and fulfilling career. Thank you for answering my questions. Thank you for the wonderful presentation. I do need to hop off this call, but I'm very proud of Mesa's public safety. I'm very proud of our police officers, and I think that, rewarding excellence is something that we should all do in our lives, and I just see a lot of excellence happening with our public safety. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor.
Okay, I'm going to be hopping off the call. I hope everyone has a wonderful day.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor.
Thanks.
Ms. Goforth.
I just want to also say thank you. Thank you for your professionalism, your dedication to the city, and your dedication to innovation and looking for new ways and being flexible when the environment changes. So I, too, am very proud that we have such a great group of men and women serving our communities. And I know our community is proud, too, because I hear it all the time. So thank you. It's an understatement to say you have a hard job, both sworn and unsworn. And it's not something that you just turn off at night. So we all are aware of that. And it's a hard thing that you do. So we appreciate everything. Thank you.
Okay. The one thing I didn't see is your overall budget and then how that breaks down, on the reductions and everything. So what's your overall budget cost, Chris? Do you
290? Was it 290?
Yeah, Chris, do you want to go back to that slide that showed
what is this police department's budget?
Our total budget,
Did I miss it?
Mayor, is, it'll be 290 million for fiscal year 26-27 prior to carryovers and I imagine some additional.
Yeah, and salary increases that we'll talk about on Monday.
All right, great, thank you. Well, that's the end of the slide deck. So
Mayor, that was a perfect segue, though, but I'd be remiss not to thank Krista and her staff. This budget is larger than a lot of city general funds in the Valley, and so we're very appreciative of the work that Krista and her team do to support all of our police department. That's a heavy lift every year to try to wrangle this budget, so appreciate her and her team.
Great. All right, we'll take a little recess here and reset for the next presentation. Thank you. Go back to work. Oh, you don't want to convene? I'm sorry, Deborah. All right. Next is item 2B, a presentation, provide direction on an overview of the fiscal year 27 through 31 capital improvement program. We have Brian and Chris. All right, Brian, it's your.
Yes. Good morning, Mayor and Council. Brian Ritchell, the Office of Management and Budget Director. Along with me is Chris Lynch, who is the Budget Coordinator over the Capital Improvement Program. And what we'll be going through is our capital improvement program that the city does for the next 5 years. So for fiscal year 27 through fiscal year 31. But just a reminder that in the budget process, the council only adopts the first year. So as part of the budget, it's only the first year. The rest of the last 4 years is just a plan, and we can prioritize as we go through that plan. But it's just to remind everyone that just the first year is actually adopted as part of the budget, even though the council does adopt a plan, a 5-year plan. So an introduction to the funding plan. As I mentioned, it is a plan, and internally we go through it. We plan out 8 years. It aligns infrastructure projects with the city goals. Also, what we look at is unfunded projects, and what they do is they remain as part of the plan, but we still have them in there so we don't lose sight of them. And as funds become available, then we can move them back into the plan. So what we do, as I mentioned, a 5-year plan is what is presented to council, and it is adopted by council, and this is per the city charter. So per the city charter, the council must adopt a 5-year capital improvement program. So the first year, as I mentioned, is funding is appropriated as part of the annual budget. So some of the CIP funding sources that I want to briefly go over is on the utility side, we have the utility revenues. Those are the fees and charges for the utilities. Also, utility revenue obligation bonds. and one of those is, an example is the capacity fee. And then we also have a utility taxable obligations, and that is, we have one issuance out there, and that is was for the expansion of the CMC Steel, and that was for the gas line related to that. On the non-utility side, we have local revenues, our sales tax, and then also what we have is regional awards and also some grants. And then we also have the general obligation bonds and excise tax bonds that help fund our capital improvement program. The one thing that we also do at the city is very key is looking at the operations and maintenance. So when we look at a capital project, we also look to see if there's operations and maintenance that will that are tied to that capital project once it's finished. So when we do, we look at, for instance, a fire station. We look at the staffing that is needed for the fire station. For libraries, the staffing for those, or a utility plant expansion. We also look at the surrounding area. Do we have landscaping that we need to maintain? Or if it's a park, is there landscaping or any park renovations that we need to do, any park equipment that needs to be done? And then we also look at the one-time expenses, furniture, fixtures, equipment that go into a building or part of a park. And then also with staffing, there becomes vehicles. So we kind of take a look at that, and that's inclusive of all the operations and maintenance for a capital project. So our current CIP challenges, as we've mentioned, this kind of goes with the operations too, is the rising labor costs and continued cost pressures across commodity services and contracts. Inflation is moderating, but the prices remain elevated and have not declined. And then also keeping up with growth while maintaining current infrastructure. So we know there's certain parts of the city that are growing, but we also have certain part of the cities that we need to maintain. And so balancing that growth with that cost, we take a look at those current challenges with those, along with the cost and inflation. So I want to highlight some of the utility capital improvement program projects. So first we'll start off with completed utility projects that were completed this fiscal year, that we're in fiscal year 25-26. The Central Reuse Pipeline is a major one that just finished and now is flowing water down. Also the Harris Drive water main improvements. This was big because this pipeline was installed in 1979, but it extends under the 60 freeway along Harris. So it was key to be able to replace that. So if anything did happen, we weren't flooding the freeway or anything like that. So it was key to be able to replace this one. We also have McDowell Roads and McKellop Road in there as transmission lines. This was key because we wanted to replace these lines before an emergency did happen. So with Water Resources being able to go out and take a look at these pipes, we're able to fix it before something does happen as part of the operations and maintenance. And then also we have Falcon Field has some transmission main lines that are going there, but also Hohokam Irrigation Service. On the energy side, some of the highlights is the LG gas line construction. For us, the construction is done. We're just waiting for LG to give us the go-ahead to start supplying the gas. And then also new services. We have here the CPLC residence on Main, which is right there off of Main and Country Club. This was key too because these upgrades, it was new services, but it also helped out with the reliability of power to 3 of our facilities, which is one is PD headquarters, MCHI, and then also forensics. So doing this project also helped out with those facilities. So some current utility CIP projects going on. Some of them I wanted to highlight was one is the Clausen Gate Station, and this is a gas related. What this does is it'll help support LG's gas demand, but also the future growth of Magma, because we know that the southeast part near Queen Creek and Santan is growing, so that'll help out with those. Also, the Transform 17, the design for that is going on right now. With Water Resources, we have, of course, you know, the Signal Butte water treatment plant on phase 2. But then also we have new ground wells that we're currently doing down in the Southeast Valley to help provide another resource of water for the southeast. And then I wanted to highlight some joint CIP projects that are going on right now, just kind of emphasize that a lot of these projects aren't done in silos of the departments. They do work together, and to see if there's one department that needs a construction project done under a street or anything like that, they coordinate with transportation and water and energy. And so the smart metering is going on. That should be done by the end of the calendar year. But then also Broadway Road is a good example of that. We have transportation, we have water, we have energy resources, all three of them working together on the Broadway Road currently. Some utility projects that we're looking to begin construction next fiscal year, so that would be coming up in this coming up fiscal year budget. With water resources, we have the Greenfield Water Reclamation Plant, the aeration basin concrete rehab. We also have a couple of projects with the Northwest Water Reclamation Plant, Broadway Road, the sewer relocation near the Union Pacific Railroad tracks. And then we also have the Baseline Interceptor sewer, and then a couple of other rehabilitations of sewer improvements, and then also a lift station. On the energy side, one key one is they've been looking at this for a few years now is the 69 kV looping. This helps with redundancy, and this is also in coordination with SRP. And then also we'll be doing a gas line project at the intersection of Country Club and Southern. And then also we have some new services that we're looking at Club and Main, and also at the AC Hotel. So these are capital fee projects we just wanted to highlight. With the adoption that council did of the capacity fee, we wanted to highlight some of these that we're currently working on. So Signal Butte is a huge, the expansion of Signal Butte, but also the East Mesa Water Interconnect pipes. That will, projects that is going on. Also new ground wells and collection lines. New lift stations, some new pumps, and new service lines. And why I wanted to highlight this is it was key due to that these projects we're looking at probably in the next coming up fiscal year of these projects of probably over close to 150 million, 180 million. This was taken out of the operating and off of the ratepayers into the separate capacity fee and is being funded by the capacity fee. So this was key to, I wanted to highlight these, that we're able to do these and relieve the rate pressure on the current rate customers.
Quick question, Brian, sorry. What's the East Mesa Water Interconnect pipes? Yeah.
So, thank you, Mayor, Councilmember Goforth, and we do have representatives from the other departments if I don't get it completely right.
And if you're going to talk about that next, we can wait.
Joe will probably describe it a little better than I can.
There we go. Okay. Mayor, Councilmember Goforth, this project is to add some capacity. So it's basically upsizing a pipe that we have that will help us transfer water between zones of the city so we can ensure, especially as we face potential reductions on our Colorado River supply, so we can ensure we can move water. Water is money. So we can move water between zones and ensure we can have basically getting water to our Brown Road water treatment plant so we can distribute it to customers that are served by that plant.
So we're each zone that you're referring to is a different plant's zone, or how do we yeah, it's not to get too much in the weeds, but I'm curious.
Essentially, we try to gravity feed water when we can, right? So wastewater plants tend to be built at the lower elevations in the city, and water treatment plants tend to be built at the higher elevations in the city. And then we want to be able to move water throughout the system as best we can. In this case, we have a smaller pipe that constricts our ability to move water that we think is really important for us to get to the more northeast part of the city. And so this is an important project to get that completed. And I'm actually planning to come speak to your office about this project in the coming weeks. So.
Okay, good. I thought maybe I'd just forgotten, so I didn't know. That's good. That makes me feel better. That maybe it wasn't that we had been briefed on it yet. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Next slide.
So Mayor and Council, this slide shows future utility projects that are needed. This is part of the forecast. So I just wanted to highlight a few of them. The Brown Road Water Treatment Plant, the main switchgear and transformer is a significant project, but also the SRP CAP Interconnect Facility, which you may have been referred to as the SCIF. That's being able to move, and that is pictured up there at the top, moving from the South Canal to the Cap Canal. But then also Energy Resources has some the Transwestern Gas Station construction. And this is key because what this is going to do is this is working with Transwestern, and it would be a new 516-mile expansion pipe from Texas to Arizona to help with the future growth of the gas line. But then also we have a few other projects, the Bella Vista Road high pressure upgrade, Clausen Gate Station as part of the LG expansion, and then also the construction for Transform 17. As mentioned, we are under design. This would be the construction part of it. And then on the solid waste is the East-West Mesa Service Centers. We've presented this to council a few years ago about renovating the East and West Mesa Service Centers and helping out with solid waste and moving some of the solid waste fleet over to the east side to help out with their drive time and making it more efficient and effective for solid waste. That is a key project. Then also a transfer station we're looking at over on the east side of Mesa, and then also the materials recovery facility, the MRF, that we're working with, still working with Gilbert on. So those are some future projects that were needed that are still, we're looking at putting into the plan.
Brian, before we leave that, Scott, is there any time frame that you're looking at on the last, especially the East-West Service Centers and the MRF? I mean, when you say Gilbert, intergovernment relations.
Yeah, on Mayor, on the East and West Service Centers, we'll actually, part of that discussion we'll have in just a few weeks as we talk about potential bond projects for this fall, because there's some things we need to do on the West Side Service Center in particular to jumpstart all of this. And it's you've got to tackle one before you tackle the other. And so we'll be coming back to you here in just a few weeks to share a little bit more on that side. And on the MRF side, I know Sherry's, I'm not sure if Sherry's here. Oh, you are. Come on up. And so we're going to make some decisions on that and come back to council soon. Sherry's been getting back up to speed on everything, and I think we're scheduled to have a conversation about this, and then we know how urgently some decisions need to be made on this about potential partnerships, public-private partnerships we've talked about, and so we're going to explore those options. But okay. Sherry, is there anything to add to that point?
No, I think you covered it.
Okay,
thank you, Sherry.
You're welcome.
Always love to be validated, so thank you.
You did great.
All right, next slide. Bye, Sherry.
Bye.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Just wanted to show some utility life cycle purchases that are also as part of the plan. Vehicle replacements, we do that every year. But then also some pumps and motors, fire hydrant replacements, and then compliance lab equipment, along with plant equipment for the water and wastewater plants. So some of the life cycle that aren't considered as big capital projects, but we look at every year and need to replace every so often. So that does it with the utility capital improvement program. Now moving into the non-utility capital improvement program. And what I wanted to do with this slide is kind of go back to when the city treasurer was up here presenting on the general obligation bonds and the issuances. What I wanted to show here was the general obligation bonds for the past few elections back to 2018 and 2013. Wanted to show the first column was authorized, so what the voters voted on and how much they authorized the city to go out for is the first column. And then the second column is what's been issued through calendar 26. And why we have calendar 26 is what the the city treasurer mentioned is what we look at is when we normally issue in the May, June timeframe. And what we do is we look back at the first 6 months to see what actual expenditures there are. And then we look at the future 6 months to see what we're planning to do, and we issue for that. So that's why we do it on a calendar basis. So as you see, and then on the right-hand side is what is issued. And so to take into one of the questions that was asked was about, and clarifying about, well, when we authorize, do we issue? No, we don't. So as you see, when we get the authorization, that just means we have the authority to be able to go and issue bonds for our capital projects. We don't issue bonds until after the construction starts and those projects start going. And so that's when we issue the bonds. So that's why you'll see a discrepancy between what's authorized and then what's issued, and then the percentages. So with the non-utility projects completed this fiscal year, as you see, we've got the Northeast Public Safety Facility, the Gateway Library, Reed Park, and some non-playable turf conversions. On the transportation side, we had the Gateway Library pedestrian hybrid beacon, the Eastern Canal shared use path and signals at Brown and to Broadway, and then also the Loop 202 Red Mountain shared use path from a power past Thomas Road. So those are some of the non-utility projects that are completed. Now the current projects that we're going on is a little longer list that we're doing. We have, just to highlight some, as you're well aware, Fire Station 224 is under construction. We have the Department of Innovation and Technology. They're doing the citywide fiber phase 2. Also, we have the Fire Station 205 rebuild, fuel tanks within the fire stations. We are replacing and taking out on some of those. We have PD headquarters going on. Down on the Parks, Rec, and commercial facilities, they have a big project of the cemetery, the SRP Canal relocation, and this is kind of a domino effect that would lead to other projects within the cemetery for expansion. And then also the East Mark Aquatics Complex, that is under design. And then also the Red Mountain Aquatics Complex is under design. And then, as you know, a few of those, transportation, Val Vista Drive, Pueblo to US 60, also the Ellsworth widening, and also the Ray Road connection to Ellsworth. So wanted to highlight some of those projects that are currently going on. Some of the projects that we're looking to start construction on in 26, 27, the arts and culture, the MAC lighting system replacement. This is phase 1. So this is for the main theater only. They're going to replace the lighting in there. We're also looking to go under construction for Fire Station 223. Also, we're looking at fire station restroom remodels. So what the city is doing is looking at those restrooms in some of the older fire stations and remodeling those. And then Falcon Field has some road construction going on. Then transportation is looking to start a few projects, especially the Southern Avenue at Country Club Drive roadway improvements, along with the gas improvements. Transportation is also looking at widening road, the Warner Road widening from Mountain into Meridian, and that is key because there is a new K through 12 school going on right across the border there. ALA is putting a new school, so the traffic will be picking up at that intersection. And then also, we have multiple dog park renovations going on and also some playground renovations improvements. And those playground renovation improvements are associated with the 2024 bond issuance. So they're in design, but now we're looking to go into construction with those in this coming up fiscal year. Some future non-utility projects that are needed. So the MAC lighting, we're doing phase 1 now. However, there are some future phases that would do the rest of the campus that we're looking to do. Also, a fire admin building renovation. We have some renovations at some of the libraries, the Dobson Library, the main library, North Lawn redevelopment. Also, as I mentioned, with the Parks Rec in commercial facilities, the cemetery operations building, and the cemetery southwest building expansion. So that is key to the relocation of the canal first, and then they can look at doing these two Also is some amphitheater upgrades, and then also Dobson Ranch Lake 6 rehabilitation. And one of the big ones down there also is the deferred maintenance. We know that when Parks came up, and I believe Tony came up also, who is the director over the facilities management, is we are consulting with a group right now, the Gordian Group, to go through all of our assets and look at all of the conditions of our assets. And then once we have that, we'll be able to see how much of deferred maintenance we need to do, and we'll be able to hopefully start planning that out in the future years of being able to catch up with that deferred maintenance of our existing facilities. And some of the life cycle projects that we'll be doing is we continue to do computer replacements, also vehicle replacements, as I believe we talked about before, police and fire radio upgrades and replacements. In this current fiscal year, we have, I believe, is about $9 million for the PD radios, but also PD has some technical service replacements, equipment. Fire has some apparatus replacements and equipment. The MAC has some equipment replacement also, but then also some aging city facility infrastructures we're taking a look at. And then transportation has some end-of-life infrastructure replacements that are going on. So these are all the life cycles that we do take a look at every year. It just comes up every 5, 10, 15 years, depending on what it is. We have that. It's not a major, it's not considered a major project, but it is something that we need to continue to fund. And with that, any questions?
Wow, thank you, Brian. It blew right through this. Council? A lot of projects. We're definitely a lot of construction, CIP, future bonding projects. We're on the move. This city's on the move, doing a lot of different things. I don't really have any. I mean, I could get in the weeds on some, but I know that we'll wait till the individual departments come up and talk about water, projects and things like that. But okay.
I have a quick question, maybe not that quick, but we talk a lot about deferring some of these projects and deferring maintenance on existing infrastructure, but on slide 5, it says inflation is moderating, but prices remain elevated and have not declined from prior increases. At what point do we say that we have to move forward with a project or maintenance, even though the costs are high? Because typically we don't see that much of a decline in costs.
Yeah, Mayor and Council, we're constantly evaluating that, and you're right. I think you're referring to when we pushed out some of our, especially on the utility fund, pushed out several projects because of heightened price on those, and because of the capacity fee, we've been able to bring several of those projects back in. But as we look at a lot of these projects, some are growth related, as we see with the fire stations and some of the utility side of things. Others are that basic bread and butter. We've got to keep up our existing facilities, keep our apparatus up to date and current. And so we have, as we talked about, as the mayor alluded to as well, that we've really tried to put a focus now on the deferred maintenance side. And I say that in the large scope, because the East and West service centers that we already talked about are in desperate need, and it has a ripple effect through all of our services when fleet's not adequately sized and we can't service our solid waste trucks and we can't get solid waste trucks out on the field, and when they're overcommitted and we don't have the bays to then get our police cars adequately serviced. It has a ripple effect throughout utilities and public safety, and it's part of that is just antiquated facilities that we haven't done as good enough job as we should have on keeping up on. So I appreciate council's support on the realization that we're going to have to tackle some things that aren't necessarily the most sexy of projects, because it's the bread and butter of what we need to do to maintain operations as a city. And as I speak to groups, I mean, no one enjoys, well, maybe the mayor and vice mayor do, but no one enjoys cutting a fire station ribbon more than I do. But if we're not maintaining our current assets and facilities, then we're not doing right by our customers and we're not doing right by our employees. And so that's a real emphasis that we're going to continue to monitor moving forward.
Ms. Goforth.
I appreciate that and couldn't agree more, Scott. So what is it that we're approving today? And where, I mean, so I think you said we're only approving year one, 1 year, I guess, the annual capital improvement plan. Is it sort of somewhere in a nutshell, or is it all these slides, the to begin, the current, I guess I'm asking where's this the full list of the budgeted CIP projects for the next year that we're approving?
Yeah, so Mayor, Councilmember Goforth, thank you for the question. What you're approving would be the fiscal year 26-27. So in this presentation, it would be mostly, if not all, of the construction that is starting, the projects that we highlighted in for starting in 26-27, but also attached, I'm sorry, it was late last night or yesterday evening, attached is the 5-year CIP the list of all of the CIP for the 5-year capital improvement program. What we'll be coming back to in adoption in June is the 1 year of the first year of that fiscal year 26-27 for the adopted budget. However, per the city charter, the council does adopt that 5-year plan that we would be presenting as.
And I was looking over that, but so if you could pull out the 1 year for us, can you do that? So
yeah, we could.
Because that 5-year plan has everything by category, not by year.
It does. So we can pull that out.
That would be great. Thank you.
So this is, we can do that in a couple of weeks when we finalize the budget of everything that's going on. But we will definitely show you that 1 year of what that capital, what the 1 year is, but then also with the plan. But we can isolate that 1 year to show you what the capital improvement and life cycle would be. The amount would be
That would be
adopted.
great, because I know some of those, they span over multiple years.
Right, yes,
Right,
correct.
yeah, and so, but what is it that we're voting on, the number for this year? The 5-year plan is helpful too, to see what our future looks like as well, but if you could pull that 1 year, that would be great, thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, and again, maybe I don't want to beat a dead horse on this. You are approving the 5-year plan per the charter. That is the requirement. But to your point, what you really want to focus on though are those projects that are either currently ongoing, that are under construction, or those that are planned to start construction in the upcoming fiscal year.
And it's in the budget.
And that's in the budget, yeah. And that's why the OMB can isolate that and just make sure that you're aware of those projects that we expect to start.
That'd be great, and I assume it's a bunch, it's all these, but if we could see it in the format of the 5-year plan, I like that format because,
Sure.
Yep.
Thank you.
Well, on that too, one thing we're spending on is the indoor rec center in Council District 2. And we haven't had that conversation in a while, but I know there was some concern about its location and so it's 4.5 million for 26-27. So what was the decision of council on that particular project?
Yeah, so Brian, I'm not sure what that 4.5 represents, but we haven't made a decision to move forward on that. That is something that we want to come back and have a discussion in the future with council about the best use of those funds. And so do you happen to know what that 4.5 is that's earmarked?
Or do we want to roll that into a discussion when we talk about the parks budget too? Yeah.
I don't want to put Andrea on the spot because she's
she's here. She's probably not great.
Yeah.
Oh, did we?
Mayor and council, that's right. We have not brought that discussion back for council. So one thing just to identify, anything that is, when we say adopted, so when Brian's talking about adopted into the budget, that's just the capacity for that. That's not the actual approval to spend. We'd have to come back to council with the project and whether it's pre-design or design work, and $4.5 million to me would be the design work for that. But we haven't had the conversation to move forward, and we haven't had the conversation at the final location.
So Vice Mayor, I think it was probably just programmed in under the belief that at this stage we would have been under design of that if it were moving, if it was still the green light to and council's endorsement to move ahead with the previously discussed location. But I know there's been a great interest, not just from council, but by staff to reevaluate some of the thinking around that. And so we'll come back to you with that. So bottom line is we won't be spending that 4.5 million.
But it will be in the budget
It's-
in the event that we decide to move forward.
Right.
Okay. But we still have to have that conversation.
Yeah,
Correct.
absolutely.
Correct, and Mayor and Vice Mayor,
saved
that's exactly, yeah, and that's exactly what, the budget is a plan, and it gives us the capacity to move forward if we so choose. It does not require us or commit us to move forward on any particular project that has not come before council.
All right, very good.
Mr. Adams.
Mayor, thank you, Mayor. So to the earlier question about the current year versus the projection, isn't that your second 32-page attachment? Isn't that what you have there, Mr. Ritchell?
Yes,
So
Mayor.
that shows the current plus then the other four.
Correct, Mayor, Councilmember Adams, yes. The attached document that it was in Legistar to this presentation does show what we are looking at budgeting for, current budgeting for fiscal year 26, 27, but then the 4 years after that is just the plan. So, and as Deputy City Manager Ken Estrada mentioned, is that this just gives us the capacity to do it. It doesn't mean that we would need to move forward with it. That's council decision and city management decision on that. But yes, if the fiscal year 26, 27 column, that is where we are looking for. The one thing that this does not include just yet, and we're working through that process, is any carryover project expenditures. So this could go up depending on if the project is currently going, and then we need to carry over some because they don't think they're going to spend as much. So we would have carryover within the fiscal year 26, 27, but this is what we're looking at, is that column.
Okay, so then to answer Councilmember Goforth's question, you would supplement this document I'm referring to with any carryover?
Yeah,
That's
so
pretty
this is just the first version. So when we go to adopt, council considers this for adoption in June, we will have a finalized version, and so that would coincide with the budget.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I was looking at the same thing here when I scrolled through here. And just to clarify, all of the funding that we're talking about here, these are all voter-approved measures, correct? The funds here are voter-approved.
Mayor, Councilmember Adams, it's a mixture. So some of the projects are capital cash funded from the general governmental fund. Some of them are going to be cash funded through utilities. And so a majority, yes, would be general obligation bonds, voter approved, or through utility, the bonding through utility of the obligations. But some of it is going to be cash funded for these that are listed in this project. And it does show this document that is attached, does show the different funding sources that are part of those projects. So it will show if it's a general obligation and which series it is and when it was authorized, and it will also show if it's a capital or a cash funded for, it will say capital fund.
Well, your detail is, as usual, very good, and I just didn't see it, so thank you. Okay, thanks.
I think where we're going to catch a lot of ouches on the deferred maintenance once the consulting is done, then we're going to have set up a maintenance schedule based on all of that, and I'm not going to use perpetuity, but for quite a few years to figure out how we're going to stretch those dollars. All right, thank you. Next slide, or is that it?
That's it, Mayor, Council. Thank you.
All right, you're off the hook. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Next is to see a presentation provide direction on the water resources budget presented by Joe and Chase. And I know Joe has his team here with him.
All right. Good morning, Mayor Freeman, members of the council. Joe Giudice, Water Resources Director. Joining me, Chase Carlisle, our Enterprise Deputy Director. And in the audience, I've got a few of my amazing team members here. Jesse, in particular, has been really outstanding in helping me, and Stella's here. She is the brains behind all this, so I really appreciate all her hard work. I'd be remiss if I didn't thank my predecessor, Chris Hassert. I have the luxury of joining an amazing team at the Water Resources Department that he has led, and a department that is operating incredibly well, and I'm very thankful for that. So our Water Resources Department public purpose is to responsibly utilize Mesa's water supply and provide water and wastewater services that maintain affordability, safety, and reliability, aligning with our priorities of quality development and a thriving community. And our budget priorities align with that public purpose. I want to take a moment to highlight some significant accomplishments, some of which you've already heard about today. Our Central Mesa Reuse Pipeline. Of course, our citizens know because Val Vista Road was experiencing some disruption for some period of time as we constructed this 10-mile pipeline, but really an amazing investment by this mayor and council in the future of Mesa's water supply by expanding on our exchange agreement with the Gila River Indian community, whereby we're able to provide them treated wastewater that they can use to irrigate their fields. In exchange, they give us their higher priority Colorado River water that we're able to treat and deliver to our residents. So really outstanding. And being that this is a budget presentation, it's also important to highlight the fact that because of the way their rights are secured, we're able to purchase their Central Arizona Project water at a lower cost, about 25% actually of what our costs are. So it also serves us financially as well. I wanted to highlight our sewer line inspection and cleaning program just because this shows investments and adjustments and always kind of thinking about how we can do things better as an organization. We actively inspect and clean sewer lines to make sure that the sewer lines flow. That's really important. We invested recently in a water recycler truck. We know that water is a precious resource and we should be leading by example. And this truck's already shown that in 1 year's time, it's going to save us 2 million gallons in water. And so as we replace other trucks in the future, we'll be continuing to make investments in this type of truck. Additionally, not only have we learned it saves us water, but it's also a more efficient operation for us. We're able to save about 30% of the time. So we're basically 30% more efficient in our sewer line cleaning with this truck. So it's been an outstanding investment. Also looking to the future, or the present, we're implementing AI technology to help us in our sewer line inspections. So again, we inspect our sewer lines regularly because we're looking to find problems in the lines that need to be fixed before they leak, right? We want to protect the environment. We don't want to have sewer line ruptures. In the traditional past, we'd send cameras through, we'd sit down and we'd just go through the arduous task of watching that camera footage and looking for problems. AI technology helps us dramatically expedite that review time. It finds the problems and points them out to us so our staff don't have to spend the inordinate amount of hours going through the filming. The technology really helps us through. That's been another great investment. And those two investments have helped us identify that our costs of doing some of this work, we can now insource it because we can do it at a lower cost than some of what our contract expenses are to do the same work from prior years. And then third, this amazing joint project we have with gas and electric utility and business services to invest in smart metering. From the water resources perspective, just highlighting a few major benefits this provides us. First off, it's more efficient, so we're able to get meter reads without sending out a large workforce of staff to collect meter reads, so that's saving on some resource time and cost. But additionally, residents can get much more real-time access to their water consumption. They may find leaks. We can help them find leaks more quickly. And that's important, A, to help them keep their bills down if there is a leak, but also to preserve water, right? A precious resource for us. There's been a lot in the news lately about the Colorado River. I think the mayor just did another interview yesterday with ABC 15. Appreciate your leadership on that matter. And Chris Hassert, my predecessor, was here a couple of months ago just to give you guys an update on our water portfolio and what's happening with the Colorado River. And I will be back again soon as we have as more certainty, as we get some certainty. But I wanted to take a moment at least to acknowledge that and then talk a little bit about what we at the City of Mesa have been doing with our own operations and how we can lead by example in our water conservation efforts. So Eric was here before you a couple of weeks ago now presenting on the transportation budget, and he mentioned this, but I want to give the transportation department so much credit for the program they've been doing to change out turf in the right-of-way with low water use plants. That's helped save quite a bit of water use. The Parks Department similarly has been making significant investments, and I want to acknowledge also our Sustainability Environment Department for helping them secure resources through WIFR grants, et cetera. So, we're out looking for where there's resources financially to help the city make investments in water conservation opportunities. Another example of that is I kind of like akin this to Dave Ramsey's always on the radio, if you know about him talking about household budgeting and how important it is to prepare a budget. Well, Water Fluence is essentially a tool to help our departments budget their water use. And I know our Parks Department's been using this significantly, and it's been helping them manage their water consumption. And then I don't want to leave out our Facilities Department. They've also been looking for opportunities to invest in whether it's low water use fixtures in our buildings, but also a simple example, but one I think that just shows how you can make little differences. We have ice machines so that our employees during the hot summer months can have access to ice to keep their water cool, et cetera. We changed those out recently from water-cooled ice machines, evaporative, to air-cooled, and that's saving quite a bit of water. So it's every little thing matters, every little investment matters. As I mentioned, our public purpose, we highlighted 3 key outcome areas: affordability, safety, and reliability. And so I want to share with you some of the KPIs that we've been measuring along those lines. From an affordability perspective, we took a look at EPA publishes a national ranking of a standard, basically saying that a family of four's water median household income shouldn't exceed 4.5% to pay for their water and wastewater utilities. Okay, so we took that benchmark and we said, how do we look here at the City of Mesa? So if we look at a family of 4 and our median household income, our water and wastewater utility rates come in around 1%. We feel really good about that. We didn't want to stop there. What about maybe our most vulnerable? How does this impact them? And so what this green line represents is a single earner family making minimum wage. What would that be as a portion of their household income to pay for their water and wastewater rates? And so we feel that this represents that, and this is really important for us, that we continue to be an affordable utility. That's an important value for us. The next indicator we want to talk about is a safety indicator. So this is a measure of sanitary sewer overflows. Again, I had talked earlier about our sewer cleaning program. A lot of that is to prevent this type of event from happening. The national average sanitary sewer overflows is about a little over 8 per quarter. The City of Mesa set its own standard. So we set a standard for ourselves that we want to be below 2. And our actual is represented by this green line. So we've had 3 hiccups in the past 3 years. Jesse would want me to point out to you that 1 or 2 of these were because of a contractor's error, not because of our own failure. So we still account for it, but point is, it's a point of pride for our department that we really manage these very well.
Someone else hit our stuff.
Or drop something in the line that blocked it up and caused an overflow, yes, while working on it.
This is where we go ick.
Another really important measure for us is the reliability of our system. And water loss or unaccounted for water is an important measure for that. So let me just define this quickly, and then I will describe what the 16% line represents. So system water loss and unaccounted for water are kind of two things, essentially. Water loss is leaking pipes that we need to prevent from leaking. Unaccounted for water can be a couple of different things. We fight fires, and we're not tracking how much water is coming through the hydrants. So we know it's being used, but it's not accounted for. And then in our meters, they're designed to capture and track every drop of water that goes through, but they're not perfect. So there is some amount of water that goes through a meter that's not fully measured. And so that's unaccounted for water. The 16% number here, or line, that's the national average for a water utility of our size in terms of system water loss and unaccounted for water. The state of Arizona recognizes we live in a desert. And years ago said, hey, we need to track this, and we need to have an expectation that our utilities, public or private, are doing a really good job of managing water loss. And so they've set a standard for us that we need to be at or below 10%. This is where Mesa tracks, so we're doing really well. One quick note I'll highlight is we had a really good declining trend, and it kind of lines up with the advanced metering project, meaning as we were going in and changing out meters, we were also seeing some drop there in water loss. So we believe, and we don't have proof, but we believe there may be some association with just unaccounted for water as we got newer meters in place. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Chase to go through our budget.
Thank you. So our department separates its budget into two main areas. The first is water, and then the second is wastewater. This summary slide shows the proposed budget for the water side of the house. So if you look at the column on the right, that's the proposed budget. You will see that it is increased from this year's budget by $6.4 million. The main driver of that is the Signal Butte water plant expansion that is coming online this next fiscal year. So there are 5 additional positions and associated costs that are built into that number. Some other increases that we are seeing are in our commodities, so our chemical and utility costs. As stated earlier, we are seeing the cost inflation leveling out, but it is not necessarily lowering. But we're also seeing that the cost to maintain to service our system as it grows also contributes to that growth. And then we are proposing an additional $1 million for our water purchases. That's what the raw water category is. And so those are the main drivers of the increases for the water side of our house. Looking at wastewater, you can see that.
Can I just ask a quick question? So I think you said it, but I just want to maybe you just say it again. These are also going up because we are treating and distributing more water.
Correct.
Okay.
As the system grows, it requires more chemicals, more electricity.
Okay.
The CMRP, we actually have added utility costs for that because we have to pump the water in some areas, and so it's associated with the growth of the system.
So I don't know if you do it in a unit scale cost somehow. I mean, that's probably not rising as much. I mean, it is a little because you said chemicals and things are going up, but not as really reflected on this. This is more about capacity growth increasing. Okay. Do you do it by a smaller unit?
So we can. It would take a little bit of work, but we do have a lot of data, and we know how many pounds of chemicals we're using to treat the water that's coming through. So we could probably come up with a number. We just don't have that
would
today.
Be pretty complex. And by unit, I mean, water treated.
Right.
Yeah, and distributed. Because I guess the distribution doesn't include the treatment. You separate those two out.
We do separate the distribution from the treatment.
Okay. Anyway, I don't know if you need to do that. That's a lot of work, but I just wanted to clarify that this is not just about increased cost, but increased capacity.
Correct.
Thank you.
And then on the wastewater side, you'll see on the right-hand side, that column furthest to the right, our proposed budget is $50 million. This is just a $700,000 increase from our current budget. Again, the main drivers of this are commodity costs. We're using more chemicals in the collection side because we have to dose the collection with ferrous chloride.
Odor control, yeah. It's odor control.
For odor control. Wanted to make sure I got
A very important factor.
Wanted to make sure I got the chemical right. And then also, this includes the merit increases for personnel. So, but overall, the cost increase on this side are minimal. So then, also included in these numbers are 3 enhancements. I'll talk briefly about them. You know about all of them. We've talked about them in the past, but the first is the Bartlett Dam feasibility study. Our share for next year is $144,000. What this project will ultimately do is help enhance our long-term system reliability and affordability. This study is expected to be completed sometime in the middle of next year. The second one is $97,000 for the SRP CAP Interconnect Facility Technical Review. This is different than the item that's going to be on your agenda for Monday for your consideration. There is an IGA for your consideration on Monday related to the water quality impacts of what the SCIF will be that we are proposing that we enter into with the town of Gilbert and the city of Chandler to look at our facilities and see what the impacts of this water exchange that the SCIF would have on our facilities. But what the SCIF ultimately will do is it will allow us to move water in between on-project and off-project to help make sure that we can get the water where we need it to be.
You might want to explain.
I will clarify.
Let's clarify.
Let me just clarify. It's not so much on-project, off-project, because that has a very broad. It's a definition, and it's able to move water between the CAP, the Central Arizona Project canal system, and the Salt River Project canal system. So, for example, water that we might get from Bartlett Lake in the future, or through Roosevelt Lake that we have already in our portfolio, we would be able to move it from the Salt River Canal System into the CAP canal system so we can get it to treatment plants such as the Brown Road plant or the Signal Butte plant and deliver it to customers in that part of the city. So that's really a really important ability for us.
Water. Some of that would be off-project water.
Correct. It would be off-project water.
So that could go anywhere in our city.
It can go anywhere in our city, right.
Yeah, it would be
But we still have the parameters of on-project and off-project. It's just that these additional sources are able to use off-project, even though they're SRP.
Right, it's the NCS water, the conservation space.
It's just, think of it, another bucket of water that's available for our utilization.
How come they're not restricting it to on-project? I'm just curious.
Longer conversation.
Okay, sorry.
Mayor, Councilmember Goforth, essentially the legalities of what's on project date way back to the formation of the Bureau of Reclamation's SRP district.
They're
And the
grandfathered
landowners,
entitlements.
the landowners are entitled to
For
that.
the
yeah.
landowners. And those entitlements to extinguish, then sometimes the cities and other areas pick them up. And we gain that water usage for our city.
And then finally, the third enhancement is related to some unfunded mandates that we still have from the federal government related to the lead and copper rule revisions done with the United States Environmental Protection Agency, as well as PFAS analytical services, for a total amount of $251,000, or almost $252,000. And that funding comes from the environmental compliance fee that is charged to the customers on their bill.
Before we leave the slide, I was in Washington, D.C. last week and talked to the Department of Interior about the importance of building Bartlett Dam and our participation. And the necessity of getting that, the NEPA and everything done timely so we could get that dam built. And so we'll see, Miranda's got her marching orders on that. So we're working on the federal side to make sure all of us are a player in that, and that'll allocate a certain amount of acre feet of water, another bucket of water once the dam is built. Thank you. Sorry, just sidebar conversation.
It's all right, Mayor.
I think at this point, we are here to take any questions you may have.
Ms. Duff.
Yeah, on the lead and copper and the PFAS, isn't there any grants available, especially since it's mandated from the federal government? Are there any grants that would pay for the testing that we have to do for the reporting? No?
Yeah, I don't, Mayor, Councilmember Duff, we have not identified any grants. This is truly one of those, here's a new rule, you need to go do it. All cities across the United States need to do this. We have mostly completed our analysis. That's the good news. I think we have on the lead and copper, we have like a few percentage left to complete. It may take a little bit because there are our most complicated assessments to be completed, but we've mostly done all the work that's required. The other good news here is that the assessments are showing that Mesa's in a really good place when it comes to these concerns. So these are concerns about contaminants in our water system, right? And so thankfully, Mesa is not discovering a PFAS issue in our groundwater table that's going to impact our wells in any significant fashion. And from a lead and copper perspective, perhaps we benefit by being a newer city, and most of the plumbing was constructed without lead and copper in our city. So we are in really good shape there too. This is not a Detroit, Michigan situation here. So
That's good. I had originally had some concerns around the Mesa Gateway Airport, since that was prior a military airport, and we're digging a lot of wells around their groundwater wells, but we're in good shape. We don't have the PFAS concerns in the water there.
yeah, Mayor, Councilmember Duff, correct. In fact, that was one of the first places we went to go check, right? So that, that's a concerning area because firefighting foam at airports was a concern, but we have not discovered impacts in any of the groundwater in that area, so we're in good shape.
Thank you.
So I have two more, Joel, is obviously, I'm big on well sites and access our water portfolio, especially in our GRUSP area, and how we're going to get that water pumped out. I know we have some well sites in the area. Salt River Project is building or has built 4 to 5 different wells in that area. So do we have a well drilling plan structure to help get that water access to our water, underground water portfolio there? I'll leave it
Yes,
at that.
Mayor, heard you loud and clear on this one. And yes, we do. We actually have some site control on a site that we are actively collaborating on. That would be an excellent site for a well to be able to recover our stored groundwater. And we have 2 other sites, 2 other existing well sites that we are investigating to reactivate that would also help us in that end. So that is a priority for our department.
Okay. I know we can always trade water or wells, with Salt River Project. So I think that's a priority to get that infrastructure in for our future needs, especially if we're going to experience any cuts. On the conservation side of it, this might be a little sidebar, but what conservation level are we at now for our city?
We are currently at stage 1.
Stage 1. And what would trigger a stage 2?
Well, we have a plan that has a variety of triggers and reductions in our water portfolio. So from the Central Arizona project, depending on what the federal government decides and how that's going to impact Mesa, there could be a level of reduction in water supply that might trigger a level 2, and we'll be back to talk to you about that if that turns out to be the case.
Okay, maybe by October 1st, they'll figure that out, right?
I think before then. I think we'll know before then. And I think we can hopefully be back before you maybe in August to talk about this.
All right. Sooner is better. All right. Council, anything else?
I just had one question. How many FTEs are in the Water Resources Department?
We have 318.5 FTEs.
Okay, thank you.
All right, gentlemen, you're done. Thank you. With that, we'll move on to, I'll entertain a motion, the receipt of various board minutes. Is there a motion for that? Thank you, Vice Mayor. Thank you, Ms. Duff. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
There's no one opposed. It passes unanimously. Next is current events and conferences attended. Council, do you want to share what you've done this past month? At least a week. Ms. Duff?
Sure.
I'm sure you have a list.
Yeah, last Saturday I went to the Mesa Contemporary Arts Museum for Family Day. I appreciate that they have these craft events for the family to enjoy. Afterwards, I went to the Celebrate Mesa at Pioneer Park. I know you were there, Mayor, and Councilmember Taylor.
Yeah.
I don't think
It was
Councilmember Taylor was there. Yeah, and we gave out some T-shirts. It was very, very well attended. It's the best Celebrate Mesa at Pioneer Park that I've seen. It's probably record attendance. That night I went to Coopstock as a concert fundraiser for the Alice Cooper Solid Rock Teen Center. We have one here at near Country Club in Maine. And so hopefully that was successful. It supports the Solid Rock Teen Centers across the valley, including here in Mesa. The week prior, I attended a ribbon cutting at the Teen Center for naming rights, and Robert Shippey contributed like $1 million to Solid Rock, so thank you to him for continuing the incredible work for a free after-school program for teenagers for music and art and dancing, photography, all led by professional level teachers, so they can have that experience. Tuesday night, I went to the Cubs thank you dinner for the Mesa Hohokams on their 75th anniversary. Councilmember Goforth was there, the mayor was there, very good attendance. The Cubs are actually celebrating also 150 years this year as a team, and 75 of which are at the spring training here in Mesa. Yesterday was Bike to Work Day, so we had employees and residents all join us down Center Street to the city plaza, where we had some breakfast and a good DJ. And thank you to the Transportation Department for putting that together, and all the other city departments that contributed and had their tables out there and giving out information on our city services. And it was beautiful weather, and we should all ride a bike more. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Duff. Mr. Adams, anything? Mr. Redia? Mrs. Goforth.
I also participated in Bike to Work, and Councilmember Adams, I guess, is not doesn't want to talk about that. He left me in the dust on his bike.
Oh, yeah. It was a great event. I was impressed. I think we got more motor officers escorting us than the president might if he came to Gateway Airport, but no, it was a great event.
Yeah.
Escorting or chasing?
Yeah, that was great. And then, of course, the Cubs Appreciation event for the Hohokams was great. That was, there are so many wonderful people involved at the Hohokams and that give their time, and that was a great event to meet people and talk to them about what they do. I had the opportunity to speak to the Red Mountain Ranch Social Club last week, which was great. They're a large group out there, some that live in Red Mountain Ranch and in the other areas, and spent about an hour speaking with them about things going on in District 5. I also went out to Los Angeles and with Tyson Matheny and a couple of other of the firefighters who talked about Firewise in the neighborhood of Los Angeles, and we also went to Madrid. I think I've talked about that a couple of times. They're spending a lot of time out there, which has been fantastic, Tyson and his team, to get up there and ensure that the neighborhoods and property and people are safe in case of a wildfire in the area. Took a couple constituents on a tour of the Northeast Public Safety Building, so thank you to those personnel out there, especially to Commander Rash, who did a fantastic job. The residents really enjoyed it and spent a lot of time. They got to hands-on gear in the truck, the whole spiel. So thank you for doing that, and I hope they enjoyed it. And then the last thing, I participated in a ribbon cutting at the One at Signal Butte, which is a new multifamily development, and it is really beautiful. It is more, as I said at the ribbon cutting, more than just a place to live. They created a community out there. So if you're looking for a beautiful community, rental community, it is really nice. They have pool area, cabana, rooftop lounge, speakeasy. It's really a great place. So I think that's about it for now. Other than Coop Stock. I didn't see you, Jen, but we were there too. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's always a great event and raises money for a good cause, so thank you.
You had left, and then she came with Yvonne. Oh. Yeah, great. Okay, I'm going to add that I was in D.C. last week with about 20 mayors at the White House talking directly to all the different departments. It was, I thought, very good. Vice Mayor and I attended the Skybridge Hotel groundbreaking there at Mesa Gateway Airport. One additional hotel going there, it's a Wyndham brand, and they should be done, what do they say, 14 months, I believe?
Something like that, yeah.
Tuesday was a communications regional conference at the Post. Public Information Officers, 3CMA/AIOA, whatever that means. Communications departments, they all met all throughout Arizona as well as out of state. And last night I spoke at the Mountain View High School National Honor Society induction ceremony, and they inducted quite a few students here at Mountain View into their National Honor Society.
Good.
With that, Mr. Butler, the time is yours. Schedule our meetings.
Well, thank you, Council. I mean, maybe there was motivation with the breakfast burrito this morning. I mean, you guys powered through this. We were worried that we were have to bring in lunch, and look at this. It's only 10:45, so well done. But we won't let you off the hook too easy. On Monday, as alluded to earlier, we will convene a special council meeting at 3 o'clock for the purpose of an e-session discussion, and then we'll start the study session at 4:30 p.m. We'll have a budget presentation from Energy Resources as part of that, and Mr. Cost will give an update on our MOU status. And to that point, just be checking your agenda today when the updated agenda comes out. We should be adding a few items. One will be the reappointment of some of our city magistrates who have been cleared through and recommended for reappointment through the Judicial Advisory Board. So those will be added later today for your consideration to Monday's agenda. And we also plan to have one or two MOUs added that you could hopefully review this weekend. And then Mr. Cost will go over that during the study session presentation on Monday. And of course, Ken would be available to answer any questions that folks may have after they have a chance to review that. So with that, Mayor, just a reminder that the State of the City is next Thursday morning.
You would have to remind me.
Yeah, I know your staff has not forgotten. So a week from today will be study session. So it will be the State of the City. So looking forward to that with no study session. So thank you very much, and we'll see you back here on Monday.
Thank you. Mr. Butler, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Can I mention just a couple of things I'm excited about?
Well, you had your minute.
I know, but tomorrow there's the Active Arizona Summit here at ASU Mix. Is about active transportation. It's on from 8 to 3. Please register to get in. Okay. That should be good. And there'll be a ribbon cutting for the paddle court. I don't know if they have
paddle
an official.
ball. It's paddle ball courts.
The paddle club. I don't know, it's just called
right
the
over here
Club.
at Robeson and Main Street?
Yeah, on Robeson and Main, and it's finally going to open, and it's Saturday morning.
All right. So are you gonna take a paddle ball now?
I will when I have time. I only have like another 6 months or so.
Very good. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Let's see, I had a motion from Ms. Duff, Vice Mayor. All in favor say aye. Aye. We're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.